Hello. Hello. Nice. Good morning, everyone. Yeah. We're gonna get started in a minute. What? Yeah. Okay. So I'm just giving a really quick introduction to our special session today on Sargassum solutions. My name is Franziska Elmer. I work for Seafields, and I'm a research fellow at the School for Field Studies, and also one of the co-hosts of the Sargassum podcast. And I got stickers of the podcast, so if you want stickers, come see me. So this is what we're going to talk about today, which is the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt. As you can see, every July there is a maximum, and it goes all the way from Africa to the Gulf of Mexico. And what it does to us is this. So this is what it looks like on the ground when a lot of sargassum arrives. And with it, there's sometimes anoxic waters that kill fish. It can smother seagrasses and corals and mangroves. The beach is kind of unusable for tourists, but also for locals. And a lot of times even also the fishermen cannot go out because the sargassum is in their bays and they cannot use their motors go through it. So it has very negative effects for our region. We have been dealing with this for over 10 years, and we have made a lot of progress, and we are collecting sargassum in a lot of places, but it's very expensive. And often it's only the hotels that can afford paying for this, and it's also putting huge dents in our the budgets of our municipalities, who have now something else to take care of. And then once it's collected, most of it still just ends up in landfills. There it releases methane into the atmosphere, making climate change even stronger, and it releases heavy metals and arsenic into the soil and into our groundwater. So it's not a solution that is sustainable. So that's why we need to find better ways to collect sargassum, and we need to find more ways of making products. So today we have people talking about the impacts of sargassum, how we are collaborating regionally, how we can find the sargassum before it comes to the beach, how we can remove it, what kind of products we can make from it, and potentially maybe we can even deposit it into the deep sea. The two things I want to highlight is that at break, you can see this piece of sargassum barrier outside by the break area. So you can touch it, you can ask questions about it. And also the last part of our presentation, it's about 30 minutes long. We want to have your thoughts on what to do if sargassum should be put in the deep sea or not. So it's going to be interactive. We want to hear your thoughts. And we hope a lot of you are participating in that stakeholder engagement piece. And yeah, so hope you enjoy our session, and let's make some space for our first speaker.
Good morning, everyone. I am Tremaine Bowman, Scientific Project Manager with Seafields, and I'm the co-host for the Sargassum session. Fran and I are thrilled to have you here. And I now wish to present our first presenter, Michaela Small, PhD student with the University of Southampton. She's going to speak on the brown tides and the effects it has on the corals of Barbados.
Good morning, everyone. As Tremaine said, I am Michaela Small, PhD student at the University of Southampton, but I'm from Barbados. And in the Voice from the Shore Theatre Collective, I had great things to say about Sargassum. Unfortunately, that will not be the case today. I'll be discussing Sargassum brown tide and its effect on corals in Barbados. So around the west and south coast of the island, you will find fringing and patch reefs close to shore, 200 meters, 180, 140 meters, sometimes even closer. And corals require clean, clear, low nutrient water for optimal health. And this is where the problem comes in, because Sargassum brown tide, which is the decomposing Sargassum, that brown murky Sargassum, forms in the near shore, close to, and sometimes on top of reefs, creating the opposite environment necessary for that optimal health. And you can see it here in this image. So this is a satellite image of a South Coast reef. So you can see patch reef here, and this dark brown water, all of this along the coast is Sargassum brown tide. And this is actually a fishing complex, the Oysteins fishing complex. So you can see how this can pose an issue for the region and the area. So I wanted to answer two questions. How does Sargassum brown tide affect the water quality in the near shore and on top of reefs, as well as how does this change in water quality affect the health of corals? I selected 8 sites around the island based on my knowledge of where Sargassum inundations happen. 2 on the west coast, where there's hardly ever any Sargassum, 5 on the south coast, 3 of which are more impacted by Sargassum influxes than the other 2. You can see the change in color. And then 1 on the east coast, which is the coast that is heavily impacted by Sargassum. You can probably find Sargassum on the east coast pretty much all throughout the year. And then I tested the water in the near shore and on top of the reefs for dissolved oxygen, fluorescent dissolved organic matter, and turbidity. Also collected temperature and salinity data. And then I monitored 2 species of coral within a 30 by 25 meter area along 5 30-meter transects. And the 2 species were Porites asteroides and Pseudopleuris jugosa. And I monitored the abundance and the health of the 2 species in the area. So the health would include whether it was healthy, bleached, pale, or if it was diseased. I also collected abundance data for macroalgae dictyota and collected 3 samples of the macroalgae at all 8 sites, and then tested it for carbon-13 and nitrogen-15 isotopes. And 2 surveys have taken place so far in the winter period, so not during the Sargassum season. This was in December 2023 and January 2024. And then during the summer, during peak Sargassum season, June and July 2024. And once all the data was collected, a statistical analysis using generalized linear mixed model was carried out with the sites as a random effect and then exposure level as the fixed effect. So the exposure level was determined based on whether we saw Sargassum brown tide at the site during the survey period. And we noted this, and then we also used satellite imagery leading up to the survey period to know if there was Sargassum brown tide at the site prior to the survey, as well as Sargassum monitoring website, which has stills of majority of the sites in Barbados and whether Sargassum was present. Then based on all of this, I gave each site a rating of 0 to 3 for each survey period. So 0 would be, well, there was no Sargassum brown tide present, and 3 would be if there was a large amount of Sargassum brown tide, so if it was that brown, dark, murky color. And what we found is that turbidity and fluorescent dissolved organic matter increased with the presence of Sargassum brontite. So there is higher amounts of turbidity and fluorescent dissolved organic matter at sites with Sargassum brontite compared to sites without Sargassum brontite, and it increased as the level of Sargassum brontite increased. What was interesting is that the dissolved oxygen, there was no significant difference across sites regardless of the presence of Sargassum brontite. Then when looking at the isotopes, there was no significant difference with the carbon-13 isotopes, but as the Sargassum exposure increased, there was a decrease in the nitrogen-15 isotopes, but there was no difference in the carbon and nitrogen ratio with the macroalgae. Now looking at coral health. So as you can see here, just by visual analysis, you can see some clear variation between species, across sites, and across seasons. So just looking at here, you can see the brain coral, the Sargassum, was lower, had fewer healthy colonies of coral compared to the parietes, but you can see some recovery happening in the summer at some of the sites. But if you look at the last 3 sites, the Rockley, Carlisle Bay, and Bath, which were highly exposed to Sargassum brontite, you can see some decrease in coral health at these sites. And I'll talk about this further, but I just wanted this site, Bats Rock. Now, coming on to the end of the survey period, we had Hurricane Beryl that passed Barbados, and this was the only survey that occurred after the hurricane. And as you can imagine, the reef was fairly battered due to the hurricane, and a lot of broken pieces of coral overturned coral heads, and it led to the decrease in coral health at the site. So because of this, we removed the Bats Rock data set from the analysis. And when we did the statistical analysis with the GLMM, what we found is that there are 3 variables responsible for the changes in health across the sites. 2 of them was, well, as I mentioned, there was variation based on the species and then variation based on the season. So during the winter period, the brain coral, the health of the brain coral was significantly lower compared to the mustard hull coral. But then during the summer, the health of the brain coral increased, but there was no change in the parietes during the summer period. But overall, the parietes was healthier than the Pseudodiplurus strigosa. And it's important to know that bleaching and stony coral disease was also one of the reasons why there was this variation in health. As we know, 2023 was a bleaching year, so that explains why there were such few quantities of healthy Pseudodiplurus strigosa during the winter period in 2023. And then the other variable responsible for the decline in health of the coral was the Sargassum brontite. So we found that the health of the corals declined as the exposure level increased. And you can see it's not a straight linear result. So it appears as though as the exposure level of Sargassum brontite increases, there's fewer proportion of healthy colonies found at the sites. So what does this all mean? Well, there's appears to be a link between the decline in coral health and the presence of Sargassum brontite. However, this needs to be examined further, and this link is likely due to the presence of fluorescent dissolved organic matter, turbidity, and then the input in nutrients. And then it's important to note that the effect of Sargassum brontite on the corals, it depends on whether the Sargassum brontite actually reaches the reef and the concentration or the exposure level of the Sargassum brontite. So in terms of next steps, currently I have 3 different loggers at 3 different sites. So dissolved oxygen, PAR, which is light sensor, and then salinity, and they all monitor temperature, and they have these at 3 different locations with 3 different exposure levels, and it's to monitor the water quality and see how water quality changes as Sargassum brontite forms, as well as to monitor any other changes in water quality not linked to Sargassum brontite that may result in a decline in health, and then to carry out more surveys to collect more data so that it can have more definitive conclusions. And then I would like to do coral tissue analysis. So the isotopic data was from macroalgae, but also like to do analysis on coral tissue to see how the corals interact with the nutrients being placed by the decomposing sargassum. And then do some more work with the exposure levels. So as I explained, for exposure levels, it was just a quick visual analysis of satellite imagery and photos. So I like to do some actually look at the pixels and calculate the area of the Sargassum brown tide at each site, and then do some further work on the water quality, so comparing the water quality changes in the near shore and on top of reef, because not at all sites does the Sargassum brown tide actually reach the reef, so just to see how the Sargassum brown tide behaves at the sites. Okay. I'd like to thank the Reform Trust and University of Southampton for funding this research, UEKFL for providing the equipment and some of the lab analysis, and then my research assistant, Robert Bourne, who was very helpful with collecting the data, and then GCFI for rewarding me with the Student Award last year to be here.
Thank you, Michaela, and also thank you for keeping it to 10 minutes. So we can accommodate a few questions. Anyone has a question? Someone here? Okay. Here. We have 3 already. Anyone in the audience with a mic? Yeah. You can start. All right. Yeah.
Thanks for an awesome presentation. I was wondering if you could see if the effect of sargassum had made corals more susceptible to either stony coral tissue loss disease or bleaching.
Yeah, so I haven't been able to look into any correlation or any effect of the Sargassum brown tide, but I imagine that if Sargassum brown tide affects the health of the coral in a negative way, then it would make corals more susceptible to diseases as well as bleaching.
Great presentation, Michaela. My residential habitat is quite near some of the sites you looked at. And there are many variables, as you said. My question in terms of management strategies, do you think your findings and our improved understanding will have any consequence for management, and what would it be, since brown tides are particularly intractable?
Yeah, so that's kind of the end goal, is to look and see how Sargassum brown tide affects the corals, and then understanding that effect and to help with management. So if we know that, when Sargassum reaches the near shore, it decomposes and negatively affects the health of coral reefs, then we can have a better idea of, maybe we should do some collection of the Sargassum before it reaches the near shore to avoid that decomposition happening.
Okay. Great presentation. Question about your coral health parameters, how you measured that. And I was also curious if you saw any covariation with temperature, since the sargassum comes in at the same time as the waters get warm, if that might be driving some of the coral health issues.
Yeah, so that was where the long-term monitoring comes in. So yeah, I have some temperature data, but the long-term monitoring now would to have a longer data set of temperature to see if there are any increases in temperatures that could be driving the decline in health that we're seeing. And in terms of the health parameters, it was just a visual analysis. So if we know the colors of the coral, so if it was the regular color that it was supposed to be, but we'll say this is a healthy coral. If we saw bleaching, we noted that it was bleached. If it was pale, so maybe it would be recovering from bleaching or in the process of being bleached or some other factor, we noted it was pale. And then if there was disease present, we noted that disease was there. If it was stony coral tissue loss disease, we noted that it was stony coral tissue loss disease.
All right. Thank you so much, Michaela.
Oh, thank you.
next speaker is Suzanne Pereira Valderrama, and she's talking about regional collaboration to tackle the sargassum problem.
Morning, colleagues. Always a pleasure to be here at the GCFI, and as was mentioned, I'm going to comment on the regional collaboration that is being promoted in the framework of the Cartagena Convention, and in particular the specially protected areas and wildlife protocol. I work with the Cartagena Convention Secretariat of the United Nations Environment Program, and we work in close collaboration with the Sport Regional Activity Center, which is based here in Guadeloupe, and we have some colleagues here, so they can also comment on this. So I don't have to go into too much detail on this because previous colleagues already addressed this, but I wanted to highlight that sargassum only becomes an issue when it arrives to the shore, because when it's floating in the oceans, it contributes to, it serves as habitat to a wide range of species, of marine species. It contributes to the nutrient cycle, and it's also, it also contributes to carbon sequestration, mitigating the impacts of climate change. In this sense, it has a good side, but the issue starts when it arrives to the coast and starts to decompose, affecting marine biodiversity in several ways, as it was mentioned. And of course, it also impacts our Caribbean communities. It has impacts in human health. When sargassum decomposes, it releases hydrogen sulfide and ammonia, which can lead to respiratory and cardiovascular issues. Also, as it was mentioned, affect the fisheries. It can limit access to fishing grounds. It can affect fishing gears. It can suffocate marine life. And of course, this has an impact in fishery, in catches, fishing catches, no? And as we probably all have experienced, it affects tourism. It creates unsightly beaches and bad odors, preventing tourists to go to our normal, clear and beautiful beaches in the region. So when the impacts of sargassum a few years ago start to be a problem in the region, this was brought to the attention of the Conference of Parties of the Cartagena Convention, but before goes into more detail, I want to comment you on the structure of the Cartagena Convention. As has been mentioned also during this week for my colleagues of SPORAC, the Cartagena Convention is a legally binding regional agreement. It's the only so far for the conservation and sustainable use of the marine environment, and it provides is an existing legal framework that can be and is being leveraged to promote collaboration to addressing the sargassum issue in our countries. No? The Cartagena Convention Secretariat is based in Kingston, Jamaica, and is hosted by the United Nations Environment Program. The convention has 3 protocols: the protocol concerning cooperation in combating oil spills, the protocol of specially protected areas and wildlife, in which I have the pleasure to work in collaboration with colleagues of the Sport Regional Activity Center, as I mentioned here in Guadeloupe. And the third protocol is the protocol concerning pollution from land-based sources and activities, the LBS protocol. And the cooperation on sargassum is involving all the contracting parties of the Cartagena Convention. So of the 28 countries in the Caribbean region, 26 are parties to the Cartagena Convention, including all the territories. So starting at COP15 of the Cartagena Convention, the Conference of Parties of the Cartagena Convention that was held in Roatan, and at the same moment it was held the Conference of Parties of the Specially Protected Areas and Wildlife Protocol, countries requested the Secretariat and the Sport Regional Activity Center to take action to enhance regional collaboration on Sargassum. So we, the Secretariat and the Sport Regional Activity Center, were requested to start to action to promote collaboration with all the countries and all the partners in the region. That's what has been done since then. So after that time, the Sport Regional Activity Center started to coordinate the Sargassum Working Group. This is a group integrated by experts of all the countries that want to be part. So the governments of the region nominate experts to this group, and the group has 4 main focus areas: governance, research, management, capacity building and awareness raising, and financial issues. And during this biennium, 2024, that was extended to 2025 because of the pandemic, the Sargassum Working Group has been working on assess how the contracting parties are being affected by the Sargassum and how this effects is affecting, for the contracting parties' obligations under the Cartagena Convention. And with the results of this assessment, the working group will update the action plan. So, as I mentioned, this has been a priority for the Cartagena Convention and the SPO protocol since then, and I wanted to highlight a few products. I would like to highlight the Sargassum white paper, Turning the Crisis into an Opportunity, that was published in 2021 in collaboration with several partners of the region. It includes background information on Sargassum to inform key stakeholders and decision makers. The Sargassum priorities is also included in our regional strategy and action plan for the evaluation, protection, and restoration of key marine habitats until 2030 is the strategy of the SPO protocol. So it includes some activities related to promote Sargassum collaboration, and also wanted to highlight that we have been collaborating with the Abidjan Convention. It's the homologous to the Cartagena Convention for West Africa, so they are experiencing this issue, and we have been working with them. We had a joint webinar, and we have been exchanging experiences and lessons learned on the management of Sargassum. There are also very, very active contracting parties to the Cartagena Convention, like Barbados, Mexico, the Dominican Republic, France, to name just a few, and I'm sure that we're going to hear about the initiatives that are being implemented in these countries. But I wanted to highlight, for example, that in 2019, the first international conference on Sargassum was held here in Guadeloupe, and also the government of France launched at the Climate Change Conference of Parties the French International Initiative to Combat Sargassum. Also, the Dominican Republic government has a cabinet integrated by several ministries that are coordinating to address the Sargassum issue, and Mexico and Barbados have also extensive plans and coordinating teams working on this. These are also some of the events in which we have participated recently. For example, the Sargassum site event that was held in the framework of the 4 Seas Conference in Antigua and Barbuda, the Caribbean Biological Corridor Ocean Forum. There was an event called Shark Action. The recently held second conference on Sargassum that was hosted by the European Union and the government of Grenada. And in this meeting, we attended a panel organized by CAF on Sargassum governance, and also SPORAC and representatives from the United Nations Environment Program participated in an event in the recently held CBD COP in Colombia. So analyzing the regional overview, as I mentioned, we have several national and regional initiatives led by the countries I mentioned and by regional organizations like OECS, CARICOM, ACS, the Sargassum program. However, we continue to face critical challenge, and it's the lack of cohesion, because often these strategies are implemented in isolation, and this can lead to missed opportunities to share knowledge, resources, and lessons learned. No? So we need to continue promoting collaboration. This has been mentioned throughout the week, so I'm repeating it. And we also need a unified regulatory framework to effectively manage the Sargassum inundations. Because as I mentioned, Sargassum is not always bad. It becomes an issue when it arrives to the coast, so we need to consider this for management. So to finalize some suggested actions to continue cooperation, we need to reinforce the mandate of the Sargassum Working Group. We need more countries participating in the Sargassum Working Group. Regional organizations can also participate as observers, can also contribute to the work of the Sargassum Working Group. And for example, we can draft a recommendation to be presented for the next meeting of the Scientific and Technical Advisory Committee to continue and to have a decision of the Conference of Parties of the SPO Protocol and the Cartagena Convention. And in regard to mid to long-term actions, we need to continue promoting a common decision-making framework integrated by all the countries of the region and all the relevant partners for this, and of course, an integrated action plan, including the funding that has been mentioned. Sargassum management requires a lot of money. Thank you.
So we have time for one quick question. If anybody has a question. It doesn't look like it. So.
Thank you so much, Susanna. And on the break, we'll talk some more, because I think that there might be more opportunity for more collaboration regionally, and we'll discuss some more on the break. Thank you so much. So now I wish to introduce Thierry. I will not pronounce his last name. I don't want to butcher it, but he's going to speak on to contain Sargassum. Yes.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Thierry de Beaupré, je représente la société DESMI Latam, la branche latine-américaine de DESMI, et je représente, notre société est installée à la Guadeloupe et nous travaillons sur toutes les Antilles françaises. Voilà. DESMI en fait n'est plus vraiment à présenter. C'est un très gros producteur de barrières anti-pollution. Et ils ont créé depuis une dizaine d'années une section spécialisée sur les sargasses. Voilà, nous allons peut-être lancer le... Sorry, I don't understand. Okay. Okay. It's just to make sure that everybody understands. I'll do it in French, but there is a translator. Ok, donc le but est de dévier les sargasses. DESMI a compris et a développé un système qui permet de dévier les sargasses. Les sargasses ne doivent pas être retenues devant le barrage, mais elles doivent être conduites plutôt vers un point de collecte. DESMI a déjà installé plus de 20 000 mètres linéaires de barrières flottantes dans toute la Caraïbe. Et c'est un succès. Certains systèmes sont déjà installés depuis plus de 5 ans, sans aucune rupture majeure. Et nous pouvons affirmer que c'est un des systèmes les plus performants pour l'instant sur le marché. DESMI continue à améliorer ses produits. Nous sommes partis au tout départ avec des barrières de type boudin, gonflables, qui se sont avérées après un certain temps qui n'étaient pas vraiment pratiques, parce que dès que le temps était un peu fort, qu'il y avait un peu de vagues, les sargasses passaient au-dessus. DESMI est passé ensuite à un modèle avec une jupe pleine, qui n'a pas donné non plus satisfaction, parce que quand il y avait beaucoup de vent et beaucoup de pression, la jupe apportait une résistance qui faisait que le barrage finissait par craquer. En troisième ordre, DESMI a amené une barrière avec une jupe pleine et la moitié de la jupe déjà grillagée, avec en anglais mesh. Et là, nous sommes arrivés à un succès de à peu près 80%. Et depuis les 5 dernières années, ils ont produit maintenant une barrière entièrement en grille nautique, c'est-à-dire que it's all mesh boom. Et cela permet à l'eau et à l'air de passer, et la barrière étant placée dans une position déviante, les sargasses vont glisser le long de la barrière jusqu'au point de collecte. S'il advenait que les barrières DESMI Mesh Boom soient utilisées pour retenir les sargasses, il faut s'assurer que l'enlèvement des sargasses soit fait très rapidement. On ne peut pas accepter d'avoir des sargasses qui vont rester devant une barrière flottante. Elles vont couler après un certain temps et elles vont passer par en dessous. DESMI continue d'améliorer ses produits. J'ai appris très récemment que cet échantillon que je vais vous montrer a gagné 70% de solidité par rapport à son produit d'origine. Vous voyez, c'est déjà assez lourd. La barrière, ça c'est un morceau de barrière. Elle fait 1,05 m. Vous avez une partie de 30 cm hors de l'eau et 75 cm sous l'eau. Là, vous avez un flotteur qui est fait de 2 demi-coques, donc on peut les remplacer. DESMI pense à tout. On a déjà prévu la possibilité que le flotteur soit endommagé et on peut remplacer seulement une moitié. C'est un moyen économique de ne pas tout avoir à changer. Les DESMI fait partie de groupe mondial spécialisé dans les barrières anti-pollution. Donc nous avons une assurance et un groupement derrière nous qui est vraiment en position de faire toutes les études sur les produits. On est arrivé à réduire les sections de 25 mètres au départ à 15 mètres pour qu'il y ait moins de tension. Les flotteurs, comme je vous l'ai expliqué, sont remplaçables, sont en PEHD. Il n'y a pas du tout de polystyrène à l'intérieur. Et nos produits sont traités anti-UV, anti-H2S. Et comme ça, elles peuvent rester dans leur environnement de sargasses sans être abîmées après un certain temps que je ne pourrais pas nommer. Nous avons... Ok. On va lancer juste une petite vidéo d'une installation en République dominicaine. Et l'installation a déjà plus de 4 ans. Donc c'est un système qui resterait performant après son installation. Si vous pouvez lancer, s'il vous plaît. On veut dire par là que ce n'est pas inéluctable. On peut faire quelque chose pour détourner les sargasses. Bon, la collecte des sargasses en pleine mer, au loin, demande beaucoup de financement. On a des moyens de collecte le long du rivage ou en en partie hauturière, pas trop loin. Mais l'important, c'est que les sargasses n'arrivent pas sur la plage. Là, vous avez donc des sections, on ne le voit pas, mais ce sont des sections de 15 mètres installées l'une après l'autre. L'installation des sections est très facile. Nous avons un système de end connector, de connecteurs en fin de segment, de section, qui permet d'attacher les sections très rapidement et de les enlever aussi rapidement en cas d'urgence ou de maintenance. C'est un point qui est très important, la maintenance. On peut pas, nous avons eu des expériences en Martinique, avec d'autres produits que je ne nommerai pas, où il y a eu des mollusques qui se sont installés sur les barrières flottantes, et ça, c'est inadmissible. Il doit y avoir un contrôle tous les 15 jours de l'installation, et tous les ans, on enlève toutes les barrières pour toutes les examiner. Les réparations sont faciles, on a un produit, une huile pour réparer le PEHD, et les éléments de maintenance sont vraiment une garantie que vous pouvez conserver votre barrière le plus longtemps. Donc, les flotteurs sont sphériques, 36 cm, le poids des ballasts pour permettre à la barrière de ne pas être emportée, la résistance qui était autrefois à la pression de 5400 kg est portée maintenant à plus de 6000 kg. Le stockage est facile, comme je vous l'ai dit, en cas d'urgence de saison, il faut pouvoir tout enlever et ne pas avoir nécessiter un endroit absolument immense pour stocker les barrières qu'on a enlevées. Un de nos points, c'est que la maintenance est nettement moindre sur nos systèmes d'ESMI Mesh Boom que sur les systèmes concurrents. Donc c'est une économie certaine. Je reviens sur l'histoire des connecteurs glissants, coulissants. C'est un moyen avec une garantie ASTM qui permet aux connecteurs de rester dans l'eau sans être affectés ultérieurement par la corrosion. Je vous ai précisé que nos barrières et nos sections sont traitées anti-UV, anti-H2S, et elles peuvent rester donc plus longtemps dans l'eau sans être polluantes elles-mêmes. Il est arrivé que des systèmes installés déjà deviennent des pollutions, et ça, c'est absolument inadmissible. Voilà, je crois que là, ce qui est important, c'est que nous avons toujours, DESMI est toujours derrière ses clients, que ce soit des hôtels ou des municipalités, en passant par des systèmes d'appel d'offres, pour l'aider à poser son système. Vous voyez donc là un système posé en miroir, vous avez la barrière au milieu, vous avez les flotteurs sur les côtés et l'ancrage en dessous. Il est très important de faire une étude préalable du site où seront posées les barrières pour l'installation, parce que vous pouvez avoir le meilleur système du monde, s'il n'est pas posé correctement, sera emporté ou sera complètement inutile. Il nous faut bien sûr, je ne vais pas m'étendre sur cette partie, donc la bathymétrie, le vent, la qualité du sol, la profondeur, pour pouvoir choisir le bon ancrage. On fait venir, les ancres sont posées, les points d'ancrage sont posés, donc ça c'est ce que j'ai expliqué tout à l'heure. Donc l'historique pour arriver maintenant à la barrière complètement grillagée. On n'utilise pas le terme de filet, parce que filet c'est fait pour attraper des poissons, et puis le filet va se mettre en U quand les algues vont pousser, quand la pression va pousser. Alors on a parlé de grille nautique, c'est une grille nautique en PEHD. Les mèches, les mailles sont de 25 mm et elles sont indéformables. Elles vont rester toujours au cours des temps dans la forme initiale. Voilà, je crois que j'ai fini. Maintenant, je peux répondre à toutes vos questions. Nous avons juste encore une chose. J'ai précisé que la maintenance était importante, mais il faut s'assurer aussi de fermer. Vous pouvez poser une barrière qui sera efficace. Si jamais elle est posée en ligne comme ça pour fermer une crique, il faut s'assurer aussi de la fermeture des zones intertidales. C'est-à-dire ce sont les zones qui sont vraiment proches du rivage pour empêcher, si vous avez empêché que les sargasses ou qu'elle soit déviée comme ça, mais qu'elle passe par les côtés, c'est complètement inutile. Voilà, très bien. Je vous remercie, j'attends vos questions. Oui, je vous en prie.
Thank you so much, Thierry. Oh, we have a question.
Yes, please. Very often the thickness of the Sargassum reefs are more than 1 meter, sometimes 2 and 3 meters. What happens when they reach the net?
Avec notre système de flotteurs, on peut monter jusqu'à 1,80 m. Les vagues, on va pas, c'est arrivé que ça monte à 2 mètres, etc. Mais dans notre brochure, on précise que ça monte à 1,80 m. Et ça supporte des vents jusqu'à 55 km à l'heure. Au-delà, il faut avoir tout enlevé parce que ça va être emporté. Et une précision, on peut laisser les flotteurs et les points d'ancrage et enlever seulement la barrière flottante. Desmi a tout prévu, donc voilà, vous aurez moins de frais à la maintenance, ce sera plus facile à enlever, plus facile à installer.
La question était quand les radeaux de sargasse dépassent 2 à 3 mètres d'épaisseur, qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Là, ça va passer au-dessus. On ne peut pas avoir des barrières qui montent. Là, celle-là, je vous ai dit, elle fait 35 cm au-dessus de l'eau. Donc vous avez, c'est un peu lourd, excusez-moi. Ça fait 1,05 m au total. Vous avez 65 cm en dessous, 70 cm en dessous et 35 au-dessus. 35 qui sont grillagés pour laisser passer donc le vent et l'air, la sargasse glissant. Mais si vous imaginez, pour répondre à votre question, si je devais faire une barrière 1 mètre, 2 mètres...
Non, c'est dessous.
À dessous, 70 cm.
Souvent, l'épaisseur des radeaux, les radeaux descendent souvent, les radeaux descendent à 2-3 mètres de profondeur en épaisseur.
Comment on envisage peut-être autre chose, mais on ne peut pas... C'est un produit qui est utilisé dans toute la Caraïbe, j'entends bien votre question, mais on ne peut pas avoir tout... C'est impossible. Et je reviens sur un point tout à l'heure, j'ai dit que si on utilisait les barrières qui sont prévues pour dévier en barrière pour confiner, il faut vraiment enlever les sargasses très rapidement, parce qu'après 2 jours, 3 jours, les bulles vont crever et puis ça va passer par en dessous, donc ça ne sert à rien. Mais effectivement, on n'a pas de barrière pour aller en dessous de 2 mètres et au-dessus de 35 cm.
Voilà, ma question c'est sur les prix. Quel est le prix de 1 km ou 1 mètre de votre barrière versus 1 mètre ou 1 km de barrière classique?
Nous serons plus chers, mais il faut savoir que si vous voulez un bon véhicule, enfin, c'est pas pour parler de marque, mais on ne va pas acheter une voiture bon marché. Une voiture bon marché va vous donner ce qu'elle peut vous donner. On va dire, nous sommes dans les gros cylindres. Beaucoup de municipalités ont choisi, enfin ce n'est pas une critique, hein, ce n'est pas moi qui dirige, des systèmes nettement moins chers, style installé, c'est le prix de départ de SMI. Ils livrent quelque chose d'installé à notre prix départ. Donc il n'y a pas de compétition. Mais bon, c'est avéré que ces barrières 4 fois moins chères, 5 fois moins chères ont été emportées très rapidement. Si vous voulez quelque chose de solide, il faut payer le prix. Ce n'est pas bon marché, ça met un certain temps pour être produit, on n'a pas des productions instantanées, mais on vous livre un produit qui va durer, qui va être efficace et qui va vous coûter moins cher à l'entretien.
We have just one more question, please.
We have one virtually. Thank you for your presentation. Are you working also with engineers or other people to collect data about currentology?
Sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Are you working with engineers or other people to collect currentology data? Because one of the most important impacts of this barrier are the anchors. So to well dimension the anchor, how do you do?
We, Destiny, are supplying the material. And we, Thierry de Beaupré, with company FIS SAL here in Guadeloupe, would assist the client in finding the proper technicians to make the survey. As I said earlier, there should be a survey prior to the installation. And we would assist to everything, but we do not have a team to do. We're just supplier. DESME is a supplier.
Thank you.
But we are ready, we're there to help for everything. You ask me to, the moon, I'll get you the moon.
Thank you.
We had one more question virtually, and it says, do you have data on the behavior of sea turtle hatchlings when the barrier is installed?
Sorry?
Do you have data on the behavior of sea turtle hatchlings when the barrier is installed?
No, I do not. I'm sorry, I can't answer this question.
Thank you so much, Thierry.
So, one last time, I show you, this is strong material. And it's not cheap, but it's good.
Thank you, Thierry. Our next speaker is Ulrich Mondu from SAMTOL, who's going to talk about satellite detection for Sargassum.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Hi, I'm Ulrich Mondong. I'm working at CLS, and I'm working in the Environment and Climate Division, and I am in charge of Sargassum monitoring solution. So before I present you our Sargassum monitoring tool, let me just introduce you about who is CLS. So CLS stands for Collect Localization Satellite, and we are the environmental subsidiary of the French Space Agency, where we basically develop space-based solutions to better observe our planet and its resources. And so to do that, we are split into 5 strategic sectors, where we can find the sustainable management of fisheries and also the environment and climate division. So we are more than 900 collaborators among more than 30 sites all over the world, so that enable us to be close to our end users that are in private sectors, but mostly in the public sectors, such as government or collectivities. So for our quick history with Sargassum, so in 2015, we explored the satellite technology to detect and monitor Sargassums from space. And then in 2017, we've been asked to provide a first service for the Guadeloupe to be able to do drift simulation on the Sargassum. So that came the idea to develop an operational service, so which is initially funded by the European Space Agency. And since 2018, we've been able to provide a unique service based on satellite observation and drift modeling algorithms to help stakeholders by providing useful qualitative information on Sargassums, on the likelihood of Sargassums landings over a given coastline. So how does it work? So for the detection part, we know that the reflectance spectrum of Sargassums increase between red and infrared, so we are using optical satellites and also the normalized floating algae index, so the NFAI, in order to be able to detect Sargassum's presence. And so we are using 8 satellites. So we are using 3 satellites in medium resolution. So we are talking about 300 meters. So basically we are using the American satellite Aqua with MODIS sensors, but also European satellite with Sentinel-3A, 3B. And with that, we can provide a daily maps of Sargassum's presence because their revisit time is twice a day. We add to that 4 satellites in high resolution, so using European satellites with Sentinel-2A, 2B, and Landsat 8 and 9. So we talk about resolution of 20 meters, and we can have a revisit time every 2 or 3 days. And last but not least, we are also using one geostationary satellite with GOES. So it has a resolution of 1 kilometer, but it can provide an image every 10 minutes. So our Sargassum's monitoring tool merge all these satellite data products so we can provide more exhaustive information on Sargassum's situation. And so we can do it in all the Atlantic Ocean, from West Africa to also the Caribbean, so Lesser and Greater Antilles, and also Gulf of Mexico. So regarding the drift parts, so at CLS we have developed drift model, which is called Moby Drift, and we configure it for the Caribbean area and for the drift of Sargassums, and thanks to that we are able to provide a drift forecast up to 5 days. So in order to understand and see which Sargassums is likely to strain to the coastline. And what is also interesting is that we also have 5 years of historical data from our medium resolution and high resolution satellite products. So we also are able to provide studies, so statistic studies on, for example, the seasonality, to understand seasonality of Sargassum, but also to provide statistical studies to provide also Sargassum's presence over an area of interest. And so the SAMTool solution is available on a user-friendly platform. So you put your login and password and also your area of interest, for example, Guadeloupe, and you will be able to get access to the satellite detection product and also the drift results for your area of interest. But you can also get access to the weather and oceanographic conditions, and you will be able to export all this data to realize a bulletin, for example. So our users are either in the private sectors, such as harvesting company, it can be also a collecting company, but we work a lot also with public sectors, with university, with also national park, and with also government. So we have a government in Dominican Republic as well, where we are also in contact with them, providing them this information. So here is a use case that we have done this summer with the Grand Port Maritime de Guyane. So we helped them for their field campaign because they wanted to study Sargassums offshore. So we route them towards Sargassum's mat of interest for them using SAMTool, and they've been able to do in situ measurements of Sargassum's mat. And so we also provide them drift buoys to track the trajectories of the Sargassum mats at sea. As I mentioned, we also have 5 years of historical data, and so with the collaboration of the IRD, the Mercator, and the French Space Agency, we did a project which is called SESAM, which is for the SCO, Space for Climate Observatory. And the idea is that we put all our historical data in an open and free platform, so we can share it for the international community. So we get access, as it is similar to our SAMTool solution, but you get access to the medium resolution satellite and high resolution satellite with 1 month of delay, but you can get access also to 5 years of historical data on this. So do not hesitate if you would like to get this, this platform to contact me, and I will provide you the link. Thank you.
Thank you, Ulrich, and we have time for questions.
Hi. Interesting presentation. I was just curious what the resolution was close to shore, like how well you can predict, like which beach it may wash up on.
So regarding the near shore, when we use medium resolution satellites, so when we talk about 300 meters, we've seen that there is a halo effect when we are close to the coastline. And so it detects false positive of Sargassums because there is also vegetation on the coastline. So what we applied in our tool is we applied a mask for 4 kilometers. But what we are using is more the high resolution satellites, so in 20 meters. So we can get closer, have closer detection of Sargassums, like 1 kilometer of distance to the coastline.
je veux parler de boutique. Donc, par rapport à ce que j'expliquais tout à l'heure, qu'il fallait une étude préalable, on peut déjà se servir, parmi l'étude préalable, donc il y a les vents, les courants, la qualité du sol, mais nous avons aussi besoin d'un historique des échouements. Historique avec la périodicité et toutes ces informations. On peut trouver ça sur votre site?
Exactly. So it's important for every study to start with data, and CLS can provide this information through either our operational tool, but it's more a daily operational tool. But we also have Sargassum's teams within CLS, so they can provide this kind of study to detect Sargassum's presence in a specific area, to detect also some statistics such as surface estimation over the past 5 years. So we are able to provide also this kind of studies, yes.
Merci.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much, Ulrich.
Thank you.
All right. Now, ready now. Okay, so now we'll have Joel Gonzalez, and he will be speaking on experiences learned through the use of barriers for sargassum containment. Welcome.
Is it ready? Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joel Gonzalez. I'm from Mexico. You can call me Joe, anyways. And I'm here to talk about the sargassum booms that we've been having in Mexico, all the experiences. Maybe we answer some of the questions as Thierry was presenting to solve some of the questions with the barriers. Now, I won't go in too much into the problems with sargassum because we already talked about this, but basically we started like in 2011 with the first massive arrival in Mexico, which we thought it was atypical and nobody really put too much attention to it because it didn't happen till 2015 when it was the other big one, and this is when we started looking at the sargassum and probably solutions that we had. So everything started with oil spill barriers. Thierry already said that because we thought that the behavior of the sargassum, because it's at the surface, it would be similar as the oil, but we encountered a lot of problems on the process. And all these oil spill barriers that we've been trying, they're not resistant enough, and they're not good enough for the sargassum. So there's been like probably between 16 to 20 different kinds of barriers that they've been tried for sargassum in Mexico. And you can see some of the examples here. I believe Martinique has this one in particular, but this was like a project in Mexico as well. They were trying to put like some pumps to push sargassum out of the barriers, but it didn't work as well. So most of these barriers are not as effective for sargassum. They have some issues. I won't go in detail with each one of it. If you would like to have some more intel about these barriers, later on I can talk about that personally. And barriers basically, like if they're like flat oceans and there's no waves and there's no winds, everything works, you see. In Mexico, even they have nets over there on the beach. This is in Mahahual, and there is mainly no current, maybe no waves, and everything works there. But the three basic barriers that we found more effective are these ones. The first one over there is a Brazilian type of adaptation from oil spills as well, but it's adapted to sargassum. This one is a brand from Greece, and this is a brand of Desmi that you just saw, and is made in Denmark. So we have pros, which obviously is very important to have the booms to prevent the sargassum to reach the beach. We already know the problems with that. And the idea of deviating the sargassum from the booms or the barriers is to have, or try to protect the most of the beach. Especially we've been working with a lot of hotels and private, because they want to protect the main part of the beach, but then you still have to recover this sargassum that is going to be deviated, and then we have some, we call it sacrifice points, so it's easier to clean like 10 meters of your beach instead of like having 400 meters cleaning, no? So it's very important to clean this sargassum, because sargassum that it reaches the coast is a problem, right? So if it's properly installed and with proper maintenance as well, as Thierry was saying, it can last several years. In comparison with the ones that they are for oil spill, they actually break quite quickly. So you will have to be changing this every maximum 2 years, and you have to be changing. And with these other barriers, like DESMI, for example, they can last more than 5 years with good maintenance. So the investment over there is cost effective, right? Also, we have some cons, which is they're expensive, yeah. So the maintenance is also very important. You need to have people in the water looking at the barriers. The installation, the configuration of the boom is also very important. So we need to do the studies in order to put the Sargassum boom in a proper manner. And none of them works like 100%. Unless there is flat seas, everything works. But if you have a little bit of waves, a little bit of wind, then the most effective ones, they have shown like a 80% efficiency. And then the 20%, you will have Sargassum coming in. So studies are fundamental. We need to check the bottom composition because of the anchoring. And this is one of our specialties. I'm specialized in putting the anchors for the barriers. We need to check the currents, we need to check the tides, we need to check the wind, and we need to check the shape of the coast, because every single place is different. Every single hotel or barrier that we have installed, it has their own issues. So a good barrier should not interfere with marine life. So that's why it's not allowed to have the barrier all the way to the bottom. You need to have a place where actually marine life can pass through, like big turtles, like because we have some barriers installed in beaches where there were nesting beaches for turtles, and fish and stuff can pass through. Now, I was saying we need to collect the sargassum behind the barriers, which it could be also very costly. There is boats, different boats, specialized boats, but they're very expensive, and the operation system as well, and the logistics is quite expensive. We have skimmers that they pump the sargassum out of the water, which is better to have it collected behind the water, in the water before it reaches the shore and it's all sandy. And there is also the conveyor belts that they have over there. Now, anchoring is very important. In some of the countries, they're been using these kind of like cement blocks, which in Mexico they're not allowed, because with the barriers they drag on the bottom. As you can see, this picture is killing on the coral, and also it kills the seagrass, which in Mexico is a protected species. So what we do is this kind of anchoring. If it's hard bottom, we actually drill a hole on the bottom, and then we cement like a pin where you can actually hold on the barrier, and it's permanent. It will stay there. So it's very important to select the position of your barrier before you put the anchors, because the anchors, they cannot move. You have to do another one, right? And the other ones, these ones are for sandy bottoms. They're called, in America, they're called manta rays. In Europe, they have a different version that is called platypus. And these anchors, we have to put them inside the sand, the sandy bottom, more than 1.5 meters, better 2 meters, to have at least 10 tons of pressure of the pulling of the barriers. And we do this with hydraulic machines to put it inside, like this one. Obviously, bad anchoring will give you these results, and then the barriers are going to be going to the beach with a little bit of storm or waves. So the positioning also very important, as you can see in this picture. In the middle right here, this is the barrier right there, very big barrier, but it's not properly installed, so you have more sargassum inside the area that it should be protecting than outside. So this is very important, how you're going to put your barrier, otherwise it's not going to be working properly. The ecology damages, we already talked about this. So another thing I want to resolve is this one. When you don't install your barrier properly, what you're going to have now is a swimming pool of sargassum inside, and it's not moving. So when there is no sargassum, the barriers should be uninstalled. They have to be taken out of the water, so we leave the currents to go ahead. This is also a mistake with the big chains on the bottom, which are cleaning all the seagrass and stuff. And as I said, the barrier is all the way to the bottom, so it catches fishes. Also, if it's net made, we should not use like nets over there. Composition of the beach. This is problems that we have with the sargassum if we don't check it. Turtles. They were mentioning turtles here. When we have the beach that is full of sargassum, the big mamas, they normally don't nest and they just turn around. And also, if they do nest and then the beaches are covered by sargassum, then the hatchlings are going to have a hard time getting out of there. So what we suggest for turtles, especially with the hotels, is to have a surveillance program where they actually can check that the beach is clean, and they mark the eggs, or they take it to a hatchery. If you cannot take it to the hatchery, at least you mark them, and then you control when they are going to be newborns. Because they normally, when they are newborns and the sargassum boom is very close to the beach, they still cannot swim underneath, so they will be like kind of trapped. And also that's why you need to have some people looking at the barrier. So if they find it, you just pass it to the other side. If you catch them before they hatch, you can pass it outside the barrier. And it's very important we don't have nets, because they're going to be catching some marine life over there. Economy, well, we know the tourism, machinery is very high price as well to clean the beach. Boats are very, very expensive, and the cost of the barriers. So we need to take that into consideration. Health issues as well. Remember that if we have this rotten sargassum on the beach, it could be very dangerous, especially because of the gases that we have. I believe here in Guadalupe they have these monitors, these gas monitors, to check how much sulfuric acid they have on the environment. And the disposition is also very important, so we need to be looking at that and how we're going to do this. The ideal we have to have the geomembranes for dumping the sargassum, so all the lixiviates don't go into the ground and groundwaters as well. And the most important thing is to keep working on the valorization of the sargassum. This is some examples that we have in Mexico. This is my friend Omar, who's building houses with sarga blocks, and some other studies, compost fertilizers, organic leather. So yes, we need to keep working on that. This is my information, and I work with Ancla Marina, which is marine anchors. This is what we do. And with the government and the Secretaría of Ecología y Medio Ambiente, I'm helping them as a director of the Commission for Contention Systems as well. Working with the government, we came to this manual. So, and this is the QR. The QR, if you want to check it out as well, is online. I see some people taking pictures. That's good. And I would like to say goodbye with the last one here, which is a cartoon. It's a tourist standing on the beach saying that the most difficult problem with sargassum is economy, where the fishes and everything is dying down there. For me, the ecology would be very important to take in consideration. Thank you. Do we have time for questions, or should I pass my time? Sorry.
No, we have time for one question. If anyone has a question, we can accommodate one. Anyone? Oh.
Thank you, Jo. Very informative, with a lot of pictures, ideas that bring us to think about. My question is, now that Mexico is one of the countries that has a lot of experiences using these kind of barriers, I wonder if you have able to develop collaboration with coastal communities participating in this initiative, and if so, it is available for governments or certain communities are able to do some experiments working with companies or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. The thing with the barriers and the materials is quite expensive. So we did have some programs with fishermen from Mahahual specifically, because they wanted to build their own barrier. But sometimes they don't have the resources to do this. I mean, we can go, I work as an independent consultant, so I can go and help them over there. but we need the funds and they need the money to actually buy material and do this kind of stuff. These kind of industrialized barriers are quite expensive, so that's why the government now is actually buying these barriers, and we are helping them also to install them and try to make it better, right? Because they've been committing some mistakes passing the time, so we're there just trying to help people, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much,
Gracias.
Joel. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Genneke Myers. No. We're moving it. Sorry, we have a bit of change in schedule. Who's gonna be online?
Can we have a little try with her sound? If she can just say hello.
Looks like Fadila is checking on the technicalities.
Okay, so we can hear you now, so you can go ahead and present. No, wait 1 second, 1 second.
We have a bit of technical difficulties, so we go to the next speaker, Kelly Kingon, who's looking at how students, fishers, and farmers and nonprofits can develop sargassum into a resource.
Good morning, bonjour, buenos dias, everyone. So this morning I'm going to be talking about integrating students, fishers, farmers, and nonprofits to develop sargassum into a resource. So first I just want to acknowledge my co-authors who are active in our nonprofit organization called SHAPO, which I'll get into a little bit later. And I want to acknowledge our funders, which is the Global Environment Facility, GEF. Okay, so all of you are here because you're interested in sargassum, so you probably thought to yourself, how can we fix this issue? And I thought, hey, I know. We use trees and forests to fix a lot of our problems these days. Plant a tree, restore a forest, right? So how can we apply this to sargassum? It might not be the type of forest you're used to, but I call this, well, the solution forest. So you guys have probably seen solution trees before, but in an individual basis. So I kind of put a bunch of these together to make a whole forest, because this is a big problem, so we need a lot of solution trees. All right, so this first one is the solution tree for the problem. And we've gone over this already this morning, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but you just put your problem, the causes at the bottom, and the effects at the top, which I think we're all familiar with for sargassum. The next trees are for your solution. So I'm going to go through our potential solutions, and you can put your own in here, hopefully later. And you'll put your solution on there, which in this case is to remove sargassum before it reaches the shore. And then we'll put our activities in the roots. And then the outcomes will be the branches and leaves of the tree, right? Sorry. What happened here? Screen switch without me. Okay. So I found these super helpful. I mentioned the first tree is the problem tree. So we want to collect the sargassum before it reaches the shore. And our project's activities are going to involve getting STEM students to design a portable, eco-friendly, durable device that can then attach to fishing vessels so that the fishers can collect the sargassum when they can't fish, is the idea. So we did this via a competition that involved sea fishers, engineers, and scientists to consult with the students to help them come up with their design. And then once the designs go through the competition, the first three basically will move on to the prototype development, and they'll actually try and build their device and working with these same people. And then from those three, we'll trial them, and the winner basically gets patented, and we try to produce that device and make it available for fishers so that they can have an alternative livelihood when they cannot go out and fish. And then the outcomes would be things like greater STEM student engagement, experience for the students in solving regional problems, less sargassum on our beaches, hopefully, and over nearshore habitats, and better access for fishers to the sea and to their catch. Our other solution tree was to actually develop these sargassum into organic agro products. And we've looked into things like powdered and liquid fertilizers, animal feed additives, and compost. And again, we want to involve the youth and women farmers in this, and to determine with them the product effectiveness and kind of which one will be most marketable and useful for them, and then kind of move on from there to produce those products, right? So the outcomes of those activities would be more sustainable farming practices, biodiversity across farms, empowered women and youth in the farming industry, and improved soil and healthier produce. Right? So you guys have probably heard of circular economy, but to me this kind of is more of a spiral economy inspired by lovely shells here. So we have a large sargassum influx coming in, and then we're going to collect it from the nearshore waters, make it into these organic agricultural products, and then this essentially, hopefully, leads to less nutrient runoff from these farms, which we know is part of the problem why we have so much sargassum, right? And so the intent is that that will actually reduce the sargassum, right? So this isn't a long-term solution because we want the sargassum to not be in excess, but this fixes the sargassum problem, well, potentially starts to, right? So that the excess is gone, and then, yeah, we'll have to come up with new products, but at least we won't have this huge issue to deal with. Okay, so as you guys have heard through most of this conference, collaboration is key, And what we're also doing with our collaborators is it's a knowledge exchange, right? They help us and we help them, and we all learn and benefit together. So we have our fishers, we have our students, we have our farmers, and then we have our nonprofit organizations. And it's not just SHAPO, but I'll tell you a little bit more about us. It stands for Conserve Habitats and Protect Organisms, and we are officially incorporated in 2021. It's all women directors, and our board is mostly women as well. Our mission is to promote environmental research, sustainability, conservation, education, and advocacy. And we're working to develop these various Sargassum products, starting with these options for agriculture, but we hope to expand from there. We've done some small trials with Sargassum compost, mulch, powdered fertilizer, and kind of a Sargassum tea, where you like soak the Sargassum and then you can use the water that it's soaked in to apply to your plants as like a booster. And via this GEF project, we're going to trial some of these projects at a much larger scale on farmers that we're collaborating with, and hopefully try out a food additive for livestock. And the farmers and nonprofits that we're working with are the Moruga Hills Organic Producers. This is in Moruga and Trinidad. They were established in 2018, and their main focus is really organic agriculture and making it more sustainable. They mostly grow rice and some really cool varieties of rice. They have 5 varieties that were brought over from West Africa a couple centuries ago. And they've developed, prior to us working with them, a powdered stimulant for their crops using Sargassum and byproducts from their rice production. And so they successfully have applied that to the rice and pineapples and some other short crops. And they set up kind of some experimental plots this season, and they're seeing with the stimulant increased rice heights and yield compared to the methods they were using before. So it looks very promising. And working with them, they're actually going to provide us with a staging area on the coast of Trinidad in Moruga, where the fishers can bring in the Sargassum and it can be stored, and the pre-processing can start with washing and drying it there. They also have a lot of equipment that we don't yet have, like tractors and things like that, and grinders. So we're working with them to use that equipment. And then they also have offered us, or are letting us, run these trials with the products on their farm and helping them to monitor the results, so they have kind of more scientific and significantly tested results of these different products, so we can show for sure what's working best, right? And they're also going to be helping us with some of the training. Our other nonprofit partner is Wasamaki Ecosystems, that's based in kind of central Trinidad. And they're really the pioneers in permaculture there since 1997. They produce a lot of cut flowers, organic food. They have native stingless bee honey, aquarium fishes. They're doing all kinds of cool things. Even heirloom Mayan purple corn is growing there. And they're going to provide training, well, they do provide training and courses in permaculture across the country. They've been doing this for years. And when it's available, they'll mix the Sargassum in with their compost, so they've been already using it as well. And then they're going to work with us to help train other farmers in more sustainable agricultural practices. And then we're going to do the part of how you can actually apply some of these organic agro products. Sorry. All right, so I'm going to jump to the first aspect of our competition quickly, which is the STEM student competition, which we named Sargassum Snatch, where we basically asked 15 to 25-year-olds to try and design a device that would collect the Sargassum from the fishing vessels, and we're offering cash prizes for this. So we got some good participation from that. We worked with the teachers and student groups across the islands to spread the word about the competition. And we also used social media, because we all know kids these days are all about their social media. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc. We ended up with 53 registered students, 28 who attended our training session, which I'll talk about in a minute. And unfortunately, only 16 submitted designs, but a lot of these look promising. So our training for the STEM students was done in Mayaro, which is on the coast of East Trinidad, which is highly impacted by the sargassum. So we transported all the students over there and basically taught them about the ecology and biology of sargassum, showed them the sargassum. We had an engineer come and talk to the students about how to design and some sustainable materials they could use, how they could make it eco-friendly and durable in a saltwater environments. And then we also had a couple fishers present who talked to them about their vessels and some of the challenges they have with sargassum. One being that it does get caught in their vessels, in the props, in the engines. And so part of their design hopefully involves something that protects the engine so that they can still collect the sargassum without, suffering any damage to their boats. Right? So our next steps, we're kind of in the preliminary phases of this project, are to judge the competition and pick our top 3 that progress to the next stage. And then the winners with us will work to build this prototype for their design. And it'll be in collaboration with the fishers, so they can provide their input as well to see which design they think will work best. And then we're going to actually take the devices onto the boats and trial them and see which one actually works the best. And whichever one works the best will win the biggest cash prize. There's cash prizes for first, second, and third place. But the top winner will also be granted a patent. At least we're going to help them with that process so that hopefully they could go on to produce and sell their device. And then we want to start the collection with the fishers. So the fishers will help collect the sargassum, and then we'll pre-process it and start making our products, as well as we are going to do training sessions with a lot of, we have it planned, 5 different farming communities across the country to train them in like permaculture and sustainable farming and how to use these sargassum products. And then we'll kind of pick a few select farmers that will actually do these more intense scientific experiments with the products and have some nice results to see how well they work. And then at the end of this, the idea is to pick 1 or 2 of these products that we want to do larger scale production and marketing. And then our idea is that this will help fund our nonprofits into the future. And I think that's the last slide. So thank you for your attention. My email address is here, our website, you can check it out. We're actually revamping our website right now, so you may visit it with some issues initially, but you should have everything up there very soon. And with that, if I have time, I'll take some questions.
I don't think we have time for questions. I'm sorry.
Oops, sorry.
But do find Kelly in the break or at any time after, because it does sound very interesting what they're doing and something that could be replicated in different islands as well.
Right. So now we're going to have an online presenter, Janique Myers. She'll be speaking on one of the ways that we can valorize sargassum into aesthetic products.
In the room. I know we had some challenges. Yes, good morning. Bonjour. coming to you from Tobago. I hope you can hear me. Lovely.
Yes, yes,
Great.
Janique, we're
All right,
hearing
thanks.
you.
Thanks to the technical team for sorting out those issues. And really great to be here just to share with you what we're doing in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of sargassum solutions. And I think it's really timely that I follow after Kelly's presentation, where she spoke about some of the testing that's going on here locally. So sargassum is Trinidad and Tobago's very first line of sargassum-based skincare. We launched just 2 years ago, doing research and development thanks to some funding from the IDB after they hosted a Tobago Blue Economy Ideas competition. And so with that investment, we were able to develop our line of skincare products, namely moisturizing body oils and bar soap with infused sargassum. And to date, we've just been on the market for about 1 year. We spent about 1 year in research and development. And as the name implies, sargassum is where spa meets sargassum. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. You can skip through that one again. I think I passed that. So these are just a couple images from our launch here in Tobago. For those of you familiar with Scarborough, Tobago, we took advantage of a public event and we were part of a chair fair along with other local artisans who were promoting their craft. And so we wanted to really be part of a community because sargassum is having an impact on the local community, and we wanted the community to be aware of the products that are being produced thanks to their efforts in the community. Next slide. So I got a question in the cantina early on, of course, with concerns about heavy metals, and that is of concern to us. So our products have been tested, are being tested initially by the UE lab in Mona, Jamaica, for a series of heavy metals, including mercury, lead, arsenic, cadmium, nickel, and a couple others. And what was found is that the very minimal traces that were found in our products are way below the allowable international standards. Now, I don't need to tell anybody here, but I will still highlight it, the fact that within the Caribbean region, and certainly in Trinidad and Tobago, we don't have standards for trace metals in cosmetics. So we've referred to the international standards, mainly Europe and the US, and we are well within the allowable standards for cosmetics. So to the question about concerns for trace metals, we are concerned and we are testing our products, and we are delivering a product that is not going to harm you via your skin. One of the bottlenecks I wanted to point out in terms of getting the product out to market is shipping. And again, this is a problem that is experienced region-wide. The cost of shipping and the reliability of some of the lines, it's just either very costly or not so reliable. And so as we've tried to expand our market throughout the Caribbean region and globally, this is one of the bottlenecks that we continue to work on. I mentioned in terms of production costs, right now we are just 2 people in the company, Donna Lisa Phillips and myself, my business partner and myself, who are investing sweat equity to do everything from harvesting, processing, formulating, blending, packaging, marketing, distribution. But we do have plans to scale up, and we're working assiduously towards that. We're looking to partner with companies, agencies that would like to either represent us or assist us in getting our products out to the market. Another bottleneck that we have found locally, and this was to answer a question that came through the cantina, how do we process and how do we store the sargassum? So for us, we harvest at sea, not onshore, and we have a very small facility, so we are cleaning or transforming the sargassum by washing it thoroughly with rainwater. That's the big thing over here. We have rainwater harvesting systems that allow us to wash the sargassum thoroughly to remove those impurities, and then it's solar dried. And this is what is infused. You can see in the image on screen, it's infused into the natural oils that serve as a base for our product. And so we don't have to store huge quantities of sargassum at this time, although we do stockpile during the peak season, just because we all know that it's seasonal, and so when needs be, we can go into our stockpile and proceed with drying this as needed. Next slide, please. So I mentioned my business partner earlier, Lisa Phillips. Now, what I should say is neither of us has a scientific background. Neither of us has a business background. But that has not stopped us from founding a business based on sargassum. This is what we like to refer to as a divine download, the idea to produce cosmetics based on sargassum, just following the science, following the work of the scientists who've been sharing their findings, their research, and we thought, let's try this. And so that's where the idea came from. My business partner has been making her own line of cosmetics for about 12 years using strictly natural products. And so we decided to combine those products with the sargassum based on what we were reading about all of the benefits, the nutritional benefits of sargassum. And that's how we gave birth to this product. So myself, I'm an interpreter by profession, my business partner, an auditor by profession. And that's where we say, we really took a leap of faith to launch this business. And here we are 2 years later, continuing to learn daily as we go along. We are experimenting as we go along. We are tapping into the science and seeking the guidance of scientists, the chemists, the labs, and all the other specialists so that we can make sure that our product reaches the globe. Next slide. And so just speaking more to the risky side of business, how do you go about founding a business based on sargassum, given the seasonality of sargassum, given the concerns about heavy metals, given all of the concerns that have been expressed over the last couple of days? We want to assure you that it is possible to found a business and to continue to build that business using the science that's available, working around to mitigate the seasonality and the unpredictability, which, as I mentioned earlier, we use a cold storage facility, and then we have some dry storage with the dried sargassum. So those are two ways of mitigating that risk of seasonality. We have also found along the way that people are more curious about sargassum, because when they are able to smell our products or test our products, they realize, wow, that sargassum that washes up on the shore that has a horrible stench has nutritional benefits, has medicinal benefits, and has a pleasant scent in the products that we present to the public. So we encourage the curiosity, and we're always happy to answer those questions. With regard to investors, we have been reaching out to and meeting with investors in order to seek not just financial investments to help us scale up, but also seeking expertise that can help us to break into markets where we're not currently. And again, those conversations really stem from curiosity, potential investors who have been hearing the sargassum buzz and want to know how they can partner with us and how they can support us. So those conversations are ongoing, and as soon as something deal is negotiated, we will certainly be making that public. I mentioned earlier the high cost of freight, specifically within the CARICOM region, which we are working along with some of the courier services in the region to get the products out. Next slide, please. So I can skip over this because I mentioned this a bit. We are still on the market for lab services, so if there's anyone listening who has laboratory services, whether in the Caribbean region or further afield. We're in conversations with a couple labs in Europe as well, because that's the standard that we wish to meet. And of course, being in Guadeloupe, where you are, Guadeloupe being part of France, it's important for us to be able to meet the European standards so that we can also have our products out in the market in Guadeloupe, Martinique, St. Martin, and so forth. Thank you. In terms of windows of opportunity for business, our company is open to capital investment, also equity investments. And we're very proud to be not just the first company that's doing a commercially based sargassum product here in Trinidad and Tobago, but we like to say, and we are in fact doing this, we're building out the sector. As small as we are, we're partnering with other sargassum enthusiasts in Tobago specifically, so that we can build out an entire sector here locally. share the expertise that we've gained over the last 2 years, and also serve as champions and advocates for policy changes that still need to be made at the local level. I think that's the last slide. There you are. So thanks for your attention. Thanks to the organizers for this opportunity to share our passion project here, Sargassum, out of Trinidad and Tobago. And I look out for your questions in the chat, in the cantina. I know that time is short, so have a great day. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Unique. Are there any questions in the chat online, Fadila? No? Anyone has any questions in the audience? All right. Well, thank you so much, Unique. And as you know, you saw her
We
email.
have no audio from that mic.
If you want to reach out, you can reach out to her via email.
So our next speaker is Mariana Leon Perez, and she's talking about advancing sargassum management in Puerto Rico.
Mitigating the impacts of sargassum in Puerto Rico. I'm the founder and CEO of Mar Caribe Consulting, and today I will summarize some of the policy initiatives undertaken in Puerto Rico to address sargassum, highlighting the extensive research efforts that are being conducted to understand the dynamics and impacts on social and ecological systems, and also the initiatives for alternative uses and valorization of sargassum. Puerto Rico is an archipelago within the Caribbean Sea and the smallest of the Greater Antilles. Regarding its law and policies, Puerto Rico is an unincorporated territory of the United States. Therefore, there is a joint responsibility between the Commonwealth government that has jurisdiction in the territorial waters and the U.S. federal government that has jurisdiction over the entire exclusive economic zone. The DNER, or the Department of Natural and Environmental Resources, is the local agency in charge of the conservation and management of territorial waters and the maritime terrestrial zone where sargassum accumulates. They, in 2015, were one of the first, developed one of the first policy guidelines in the region. They developed the protocol for handling extreme accumulation of sargassum that in 2016 served as a reference for the Caribbean Regional Fishery Mechanism member states. And later in 2023, due to a joint resolution mandate, the agency updated this protocol and incorporated other specific management strategies. So moving from the paper to the practice, during the period of 2015 and 2023, the protocol had minimal implementation. There were mainly fragmented efforts and reactive efforts that were taking place. And also there was and there is some institutional limitations that limit the capacity of the agency to plan and to conduct some management interventions. The DNER acquired 6 beach rake tractors and 1 sargassum removal vessel, but they can only use it in the main island and not in the 2 island municipalities. So there are some limitations around that, and also regarding the staff availability as well. Also, there are some funding challenges, but they're still supporting planning efforts towards a more comprehensive mitigation plan in the future. And finally, also there is a lot of a complex and unclear permitting process involving local and federal jurisdictions that leads to delay and increase in the risk of non-compliance and project abandonment. Particularly, there's challenges regarding the permits for in-water collection and also the placement of booms. So in an effort to clarify this and clarify the Sargassum legal framework, we conducted this study titled First Steps Towards Untangling the Sargassum Legal Regime in Puerto Rico. And we identified the federal and Commonwealth agencies with jurisdiction, the permits needed for sargassum removal activities and ocean disposal, and we identified obstacles for implementing effective mitigation strategies and also potential solutions for facilitating the permit application process. Also, recently, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration published this report focused on a policy analysis and agency gaps assessment around this topic. Although in comparison with other countries, Puerto Rico has a slower implementation rate regarding sargassum management actions, Puerto Rico has been producing important research around this topic. So I'm going to highlight some of these efforts. These are related to sargassum dynamics and detection. There have been some studies using AI and machine learning algorithms to enhance the detection of sargassum using satellite imagery. Also, there is an effort to develop using remote sensing techniques a sargassum decay index to correlate the spectral signatures with the water quality parameters observed. Also, correlations between Saharan dusk and sargassum concentrations. The development of high-resolution models to predict sargassum inundations in the coastal waters. And also experimental models to forecast hypoxia and ocean acidification due to sargassum influxes. Now, regarding socioeconomic impacts and management, there had been some research, one of them as an assessment of the vulnerability of households in coastal communities in Puerto Rico. Also, the creation of an index to prioritize sargassum management efforts based on socioeconomic, ecological, and management characteristics. And the development of methods to use drones to measure harmful gases that are emitted by decomposing sargassum. Regarding ecological impacts, there has been many research, many of them in the water quality topic, looking at the impacts of sargassum brown tide, etc. Also around heavy metals and the concentration in different areas in Puerto Rico, the impacts of sargassum on mangrove productivity and mortality, the impacts of in seagrass aerial cover, also the impacts on habitat, how that reflect to juveniles, to impacts in the juveniles of managed species, and plankton studies looking at shifts in functional groups and abundance. Also, there has been some research trying to advance on alternative uses and products derived from sargassum. At the university level, there has been projects focused on development of biofuel, biocarbon, textiles, sunblock, construction materials, remediation membranes for soil pollution, and also drug delivery. Solid electrolytes for batteries, and filaments for 3D printing. Also, there has been some external collaborations, innovative partnership driving sargassum valorization and technology development. And an important one is a collaboration between Invest Puerto Rico and New Lab, which aim to cohort these companies to convert sargassum into valuable products, steering Puerto Rico towards a circular economy. And they're collecting nearshore sargassum, composting it, integrating it into bioplastic products, creating a micro biorefinery, creating of sargassum-based yarn, etc. Also, there is a carbon wave, which is transforming sargassum into bioplastics, textiles, and cosmetics. and the Ocean Foundation that is working on developing biochar for soil enrichment in reforestation efforts. So as you can see, there's a lot of research going on, but there is even more potential of doing more. Puerto Rico is a small island archipelago. We have about 9,000 square kilometers, and in that small space, we have about 30 universities with different programs, very diverse, including environmental and marine sciences, public health, agriculture, engineering, businesses, etc. There's also accessibility for federal funds, including research grants, particularly in STEM fields, and the potential to serve as an entry point for sargassum-related innovations into the US market. So finally, I just wanted to highlight that we can all benefit from collaborative solutions and resource pooling, that Puerto Rico can learn from more experienced nations, accelerating effective management implementation, and that also the region can benefit from the research that is being conducted in Puerto Rico. Sometimes Puerto Rico is out of some regional initiatives due to the status as a US territory, but I think it's important that we have a unified approach towards this shared challenge. So these are the research entities that are working in the projects I mentioned. I can provide you with more information if you're interested in connecting with any of them. I really look forward to collaborate with you. Please reach out through the conference app or by email, and we can schedule a call to talk. So thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you very much, Mariana. And I understand Mariana is not online, right? She is, okay. So Mariana is online if anybody has a question for her. I don't see any questions in the room. Maybe everybody wants a break. Thank you again, Mariana. And if you have questions for her afterwards, feel free to contact her via email.
Oh, it's good. Yeah, it's good. Was I okay? I'm not used to talking on the microphone. I leave it here. It's okay with you?
Ready to start. Please sit down. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. Please take a seat so we can continue. Our next speaker is Sarah Gaspar, who's going to talk to us about products they are making here in Guadeloupe.
Okay, good morning. Okay. Yes, I can see, but okay. Okay. Good morning. Thank you for the organizers to give me the opportunity to present our work on conversion and valorization of sargassum. So I will present some works on the chemistry we are doing on sargassum, which is mainly on carbon materials preparation for different applications. So why we are so interested in carbon materials? So activated carbon can be used for air, water treatment, food, car, energy, industries, and medicine. And biochars are now very popular for agriculture as nutrient storage for plant growth and carbon storage in soils. So the annual needs of activated carbon is about 1.9 million of tons. So in our work, which is a Covashim laboratory work at the University of Antibes in Guadeloupe, so we work on valorizing biomass, so diverse biomass, on doing carbon materials for water treatment, polluted with pharmaceutical residues, pesticide, energy storage, pesticide sequestration in soils, for animals and plants protection, and also capacitive deionization. So I will present some data on carbon material preparation, the application, and some conclusions. So in our lab, we work with different biomass, and here we will focus on Sargassum. So we use lignocellulosic biomass, and as well Posidonia, which is a marine plant. So here you can see oven, classical ovens that you use for activated carbon preparation. So carbon materials preparation are prepared by physical activation, chemical activation, or hydrothermal carbonization. When we just do a pyrolysis, we obtain a biochar, and then we activate this biochar by using water activation or CO2 gas activation. For chemical activation, we must soak the biomass, so the alga, and then carbonize it. Hydrothermal carbonization has the advantage that the biomass can be used even when without drying it, so with water, which is very interesting because we don't need to dry it as we need it for physical or chemical activation, classical activation. So we have seen that we can prepare activated carbon from Sargassum and for chromium adsorption, and we obtain very good and interesting results, similar for activated carbon, commercial activated carbon. What we have also done is to use, to prepare catalytic activated carbon. So we prepare them by using iron 2 and iron 3 by a mixing of both. And those activated carbon allow us to degrade some antibiotics such as tetracycline, penicillin, and erythromycin. So we have those kind of material when using ozone, so we can have a very low concentration of those compounds. So impregnated iron activated carbon can be prepared from Sargassum. Another project that we had was the Pyrosar project. So it was to use Sargassum, biochar, and activated carbon for chlordecone sequestration. Chlordecone is a pesticide that was used in Guadeloupe and Martinica in banana fields, which is now polluting 1/3 of agricultural land area in Guadeloupe. So it's become urgent to remediate to soil. And before anaerobic bioremediation, what we are thinking is to sequester the pollution in the soil so that the pollution doesn't move to animals or to plants. So we work for this project in collaboration with SMO, which is NST. We have set up SMO process, which is a solar microwave pyrolysis process that is able to treat 27 tons per day of Sargassum. So as it was a microwave oven, they have a microwave oven, we had to set up the microwave pyrolysis of the Sargassum. So we optimized this pyrolysis, and we found that we had to use a power of 1,500 and a time which was 15 minutes to have a good activated carbon. So we tried this activated carbon, and we could find that a biochar, so in vitro studies, showed that we had about 80% of sequestration of chlordecone using a biochar prepared with a Sargassum. So this result was obtained in vitro. So then we did some in vivo results using some animals, so using chicken and as well pork, and we could measure the chlordicon, the amount of chlordicon which was trapped or which was transferred to eggs or also to muscle or to the liver of the animals. So we could find that we have a lowering of 30% of the chlordicon in the eggs and also in the liver of the animal. So showing that Sargassum biochar could be used to limit the transfer of the pollution to animals. Anyway, we are as well conscious that we have to improve the characteristics of our carbon materials, as we show that darko carbon materials, that was commercial carbon, had obtained results around 60%. So another work that we have done concerned the use of Colosia esculenta, which is taro, and we could find that the removal of the trapping of chlordicon on the taro was about 90%. So it was with in vitro data that we had after 6 months of growing these plants. And what we have done now, we are doing some field work, and we have mixed some sargassum activated carbon with soil, and we are now testing the taro. I mean, we are growing the plants, and we are currently testing the taro to see if we could have the sequestration of the chlordicon. So another work what we have done is to see if we can first extract the molecules, the biomolecules, and then prepare the activated carbon. So we did several extraction procedure, and and so we could find we can extract first sodium alginate as well, but as well mannitol was identified, and we found some antioxidant properties in these extracts. And we also did some extract with acetyl acetate, and we could find in an iron electrode that when we had immersion in an acidic solution, we had a very strong corrosion, and this corrosion was inhibited when we use this extract, acetyl acetate extract of sargassum. So showing that we could use, we could coat metals with this sargassum deposit. So after this extraction of the molecule, we had some sargassum residue, and we could prepare some carbon material, some biochars, and we saw that we had very nice absorption capacity of those carbon material after extraction of biomolecules. Then another project that we had is to use sargassum for preparation of carbon material for electrodes, and we could prepare those material by hydrothermal carbonization. As I said, the advantages of hydrothermal carbonization is that we don't need to dry the biomass. So we just do this treatment, and that we do an activation. So we find interesting results showing that we have interesting capacity, which is here, 280, which means that this compound can store energy very interestingly compared to other biomass that have been tested. So to conclude, we can say that sargassum biomass can be used for biochar and activated carbon synthesis for various applications. But as well, algae can be considered as a stock of biomolecules that can be valorized in carbon materials after extraction, and optimization of industrial synthesis of activated carbon is in course, and as well pilot scale experiments. So here is our team. And I have to thank CAPES, Pirobien, FEDER, Région Guadeloupe, for PyroSAR project, and also SAR Good project, Fondoseed from Dominican Republic, FEDER region for this funding. Thank you for your attention.
Do we have any questions for Sarah? We have a question up here.
Greetings from Barbados. My name is Rashida Speed, and I am happy.
Wow, I thought I was throwing my voice then. Can I ask, so if the biochar sequesters the chlordicon, what do you then do with the material once that process is complete?
You mean after we put it in the soil?
Yeah.
What we are going to do with it?
Yep.
So what we are thinking is that this remediation, this kind of remediation is a first step before doing bioremediation. What we are planning to do is to do some bio-augmentation, so using bacteria which are in soils, or adding some bacteria that we are cultivating, so that we can bioremediate the soil from chlordicon. So we are thinking that this is a first step before a real remediation.
Well, fantastic work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. If no more questions for Sarah, thank you so much, Sarah. All right. Now we'll have an online presentation by Rashida Speed. She's going to speak on the Sargassum landscape study.
From Barbados. My name is Rashida Speed, and I am happy to be here for the 77th annual GCFI conference to share with you some of the highlights from the exciting work that we conducted on behalf of the IBB lab. I'd like to acknowledge my co-authors, Dr. Christy Allen and Dr. Shelly Ann Cox, who were instrumental in helping to pull together this sargassum landscape study. Today, we're discussing sargassum valorization in the Caribbean. But before diving into the key findings, let's set the stage. Many of you in the sargassum field may recognize this graphic, which was taken from the 2022 Sargassum Uses Guide. It highlights potential applications for sargassum across 15 different sectors, and it shows the variety of products that can be derived from just 1 ton of fresh sargassum. While there are numerous potential uses for sargassum, there have also been high hurdles, which have definitely hindered the development and the scaling up of many products and services. And Oxenford et al. 2021 did an excellent job in categorizing these challenges into 5 broad categories as shown here. And only a handful of solutions have really gained traction in the Caribbean. And as sargassum valorization gains momentum, understanding the long-term viability of these products and services is essential. And this was the primary aim of the sargassum landscape study. Specifically, the aim was to identify, record, and assess the technological advancements employed in Central America, Mexico, and the Caribbean for sargassum utilization. And we used a multi-method approach, which, to put simply, involved a thorough desktop review, speaking to sargassum entrepreneurs, experts, and also government officials. We also visited sargassum facilities, conducted surveys with community members, and finally, all of this information was analyzed to prepare the final report. Now moving on to our findings. From our investigations, we found that the most practical and feasible solutions that have gained traction in the Caribbean region include compost, biostimulants, bioplastics, biogas, construction material, and onshore and in-water harvesting equipment. In the next few slides, I'll briefly discuss each of these applications, some key considerations, and also highlight some successful businesses that have effectively commercialized these products and services. Composting sargassum has gained popularity as quite a cost-effective and a practical solution for managing these influxes, although concerns over heavy metal content still remain. But entrepreneurs have been tackling this by adding other organic material to reduce the overall heavy metal content and also to improve the quality of the product. And some companies have even developed methods to neutralize the heavy metals, making them inaccessible to plants. A very interesting bit of research in Jamaica showed that mangrove plants can regulate heavy metal uptake, and the authors documented positive seedling growth using a sargassum compost mix. And since the entire plant is used, we estimate that sargassum compost holds high potential to contribute to the reduction of sargassum biomass along the coast. And here are some of the businesses that we interviewed that have already started commercializing sargassum compost. Algenova in the Dominican Republic, Progenix, Instant Kits, and Blue Green in Mexico. Next, we have liquid extracts, and seaweed-based biostimulants and fertilizers are quite popular globally. Brown seaweeds contain phytohormones, nutrients, and minerals that promote plant growth and can enhance tolerance to stresses like salinity. Seaweed extracts typically have lower heavy metal content because the extraction process actually isolates the beneficial compounds, leaving behind much of the plant material where heavy metals tend to accumulate. However, this can lead to more waste generated, which can limit the potential for reducing sargassum biomass. Many of us have heard of Algas Organics, the pioneers of sargassum biostimulant based in St. Lucia. And in addition to Algas, other small to medium scale businesses have also been making strides in this area, such as Red Diamond Compost in Barbados, SOS Carbon in the Dominican Republic, and Tianco in Mexico. On to bioplastics, and the market for biodegradable material is growing, and brown seaweeds contain polysaccharides, which can be used for bioplastic production, for instance, in food containers, packaging, bottles, and bags. But the quality and the properties of sargassum can vary, which can lead to inconsistencies in production. Sargassum-based bioplastics also degrade pretty fast, less than 14 days in some instances, and can serve as a natural fertilizer. We estimate that sargassum-based bioplastics have medium potential to contribute to the reduction in sargassum. Bearing in mind the amount of sargassum used varies depending on the type of product, and some countries have been using as much as 50% of sargassum to produce things like compostable plates. These are the businesses that we interviewed that are exploring commercialization of sargassum-based bioplastics. We have Bioplaster and Thalasso, both based in Mexico, and Algenova, again, in Dominican Republic. Now let's talk about biogas. Research shows that sargassum is a promising candidate for biogas production based on various properties shown here. However, it has some limitations, which require processing and mixing with other organic material to increase the overall methane yield. As it relates to the practical application, biogas offers an environmentally friendly alternative for cooking gas, heating, generating electricity, and even powering vehicles. There is high potential for reducing sargassum biomass. In fact, Nopalimex, a company based in Mexico, is setting up a facility that is capable of processing up to 150 tons of sargassum per day. And to our knowledge, Rum and Sargassum, based in Barbados, is the only company in the Caribbean that has commercialized biofuel using sargassum so far. However, other companies, for instance, in the Dominican Republic and also Mexico, are exploring this exciting opportunity. And then we have construction material, which not only has a wide range of potential applications, but some of the solutions, like construction blocks, are not overly technical to create. Another benefit is that the whole plant can be utilized with minimal pretreatment depending on the application. And of course, the application of sargassum in construction material in the Caribbean is still relatively new, and things like the potential for rotting in high humidity environments still need to be tested, among other factors. And more simulation studies will also be needed to ensure long-term durability of seaweed construction blocks. We estimate that there is high potential to contribute to the reduction in sargassum. For instance, construction blocks can use as much as 40% of sargassum. Blue-green in Mexico has been very popular, especially with the commercialization of Sarga block used in the construction of houses. And then there's the marine box in Martinique that is creating sargassum-based coffins and urns. I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with the harvesting and collection equipment, the offshore barriers, the harvesting barges, the beach rakes. These became really popular, especially in the Spanish-speaking Caribbean. And there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Every environment is unique. And to help entrepreneurs choose the appropriate methods, we recommend using this matrix developed by UV Cermis in Barbados. Some harvesters are capable of harvesting about 200 tons of sargassum a day, so definitely a high potential to contribute to the reduction in sargassum. SOS Carbon, Algenova, Thalasso, and Marlif are at the forefront with their sophisticated designs for harvesters and barriers. And one of the key highlights of our study is the development of the Sargometer concept, which is a rapid assessment tool designed to help entrepreneurs quickly understand the major factors that can affect the sustainability and the effectiveness of a given solution. And of course, this can help innovators to gauge how well their ideas can be implemented in real-world settings, and of course, assess their potential for long-term impact. The Sargometer includes a scoring sheet that provides a quantitative evaluation of products and services across the key factors. And of course, this would allow entrepreneurs to see the strengths and weaknesses so that they can refine their products and services. So looking ahead, there is much to be considered for future development of sargassum industries, such as the mainstreaming of national policy frameworks, more in-depth value chain analyses and market research, the adoption of biorefinery approaches to really maximize the use of the entire plant. The issue of ownership and rights also need to be ironed out. Should we consider things like licensing mechanisms? And of course, the establishment of regulatory guidelines for things like harvesting and heavy metal content. And this was just a sneak peek into our report, given the time constraints, but we do encourage you to visit the IDB website to access the full report. Thank you so much for your time.
Fadila, is Rashida online? Does anyone have any questions for Rashida? Is there a question? No? I may have one. I don't know if she mentioned that, like, the timeline on the development of the Sargometer. Like, when might it be ready for use by the general public?
Hi, are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your question. The Sargameter is ready to be used. Actually, a couple months ago, when IDE launched their Sargassum Innovation Quest, they actually used the Sargameter as a tool to evaluate all of the different proposals that were brought forward to help them to choose which are likely to be successful and sustainable in the long term. So you can definitely download the Sargameter from the website. But I would say that Hi, hello? I lost the screen.
Yes, no, we're hearing you.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, I would say that we selected factors that were based on our research, and our sample size was relatively small. We spoke to about 13 businesses to gain insight, and definitely these factors may change depending on the scale of the operations. So I would advise that the Sargameter be used as a starting point for initial assessments, but we also recommend like a deeper analysis with multiple participants of the same technological solution. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Rashida.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you.
So now we're coming to the last part of our Sargassum session, which is focused on should we send Sargassum to the deep sea? And we start with Tremaine, who talks about different deep sea research methods that could help us answer this question in a better way.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So I come today to ask the question, how deep is deep? Because last year I went to the Scripps Oceanography Institute in San Diego, and I was a part of the Deep Ocean Observing Strategy. We had like a series of mini workshops, and there was one workshop that was called Cheap and Deep. And after we have our breakout sessions, and then we reconvene to talk about, you know, what our possible deep ocean collective solutions are, the Cheap and Deep person said, well, we didn't find any solutions just yet because we spent the entire morning arguing how deep is deep. So, so as typically it is understood that the deep sea is deeper than 200 meters below the surface where light begins to fade. However, my colleague in the Philippines, he always reminds me when I talk to him that deep is also beyond diver depth. Because yesterday at the Cinefish, we spoke about the fact that, about when we were talking about the beaked whales, the movie on the beaked whales, our colleague was saying that she can dive as deep as 15 feet, right? But what about all the research that happens further down? And finding reasonably costed material and technologies is not easy. So as much as we typically accept that the deep is 200 meters and below, there's also a lot of persons advocating for sufficient technology to go a little deeper than the typical person can dive, yeah? So typically deep sea sampling falls into three categories: geological sampling, biological sampling, and water sampling could also be considered as chemical sampling. And of course, there's always overlap. There's biogeochemical deep sea research that encompasses all at once, right? So as it pertains to our geological sampling, it could be either indirect or direct. Indirect would encompass our satellites, or acoustic and sonar, as well as some seismic surveys. But direct focuses mainly on actually taking stuff from the deep, yeah? And in terms of our indirect surveying, we use a multi-beam echo sounder. I'm going back to the beaked whales again. I think she mentioned that, you know, the beaked whales use their echolocation to send out a signal and then determine when it bounces back to them. So most of our technology has natural analogs. And our multi-beam echo sounder is basically analogous to that echolocation, whereby they send a ping down to the deep sea, and it determines how long depending on how long it takes to come back to the vessel. That's how we were able to map the seafloor. So last year in December, Seafields was able to co-lead a deep sea research project to determine the feasibility of sinking sargassum to the deep sea aboard the Royal Research ship, the James Cook. And here we were able to map an area 4 times the size of Barbados. So 2 of our sites, they're much smaller than that, right? We're characterizing just 2 sites, but nevertheless, we mapped that site, and we mapped the entire area in order to help with the capacity development of Barbados. So we were able to pass on those files to the Coastal Zone Management Unit to assist with their marine spatial plan. So typically, we're going now to very direct ways of sampling. So we do seafloor sediment sampling, and usually we use clear tubes. And there are many different types of cores. There are gravity cores, but we're not gonna, dive all the way into that just for today. But it's very interesting, and I want to, is this the pointer? I want to bring your attention to, this is a polykey tube, and I don't know if you see this here. This is a piece of Sargassum that we took from, was this one from 1500? I think it was probably 1500 meters deep when we sampled. So 2 of us, so our site, one is at 1500 meters deep, and the other is 4,500 meters deep. So yeah, down at the bottom, we were able to get a piece of Sargassum that was pretty well preserved. When it comes to water sampling now, we were able to use a CTD rosette with Niskin bottles to determine the water column profile. And our colleague Michaela, who presented first, she was a huge part of this as well. Oh, switch. She was a huge part of this. She determined the oxygen production of the down at the deep sea. So yeah, there's from these samples we're able to determine dissolved oxygen, dissolved inorganic carbon, alkalinity, and nutrients. Now, when it pertains to biological sampling, and this happens in the deep sea with remotely operated vehicles, on this research cruise, we did not take any biological samples. And from my training with the Coastal Ocean Biosphere Research Accelerator, I came to understand that trying to sample biological organisms from the deep sea can be extremely complex because you have to give a very detailed description of what you intend to find. But sometimes you find things that you didn't expect to find, and you want to explore further. But nevertheless, when you're operating in someone's EEZ, it's very important to be sure that you're not taking too much from and taking what you're not permitted to. So I'm hoping I'll be able to provide the link to this platform later today, because this is from the UC San Diego. They have this platform that shows you how much deep sea is in your EEZ. And I spend a lot of my free time playing around with this. And you realize how much of the Caribbean has deep sea in their EEZ, right? I mean, just taking Guadeloupe and Martinique's exclusive economic zone, you see that basically 98% of it contains deep sea, and this is deeper than 200 meters, right? And one of the things that from attending these workshops, they're encouraging us to, as much as we know we are small island developing states, we have to acknowledge the fact that we are also big ocean states, and we have the biggest stake in terms of anything happening in our marine spaces, right? So while we are SIDS, we are also bosses, and I really like the little acronym, so we have to at all times acknowledge that we are big ocean states, so we focus a lot on our land masses. But if we start focusing on our marine space, and if we start having to put policies in place, then they have to listen to us, they have to hear us, because we are most likely to be affected by anything happening in the ocean. And some implications for deep sea research in the Caribbean. So we find that deep sea research in the Caribbean it has revealed diverse ecosystems and environmental challenges. So I think it was Back to the Beaked Whales. Clearly, you can tell which was my favorite movie. These studies have documented the marine litter, and we heard that they mentioned that very deep, you still find marine litter. The deep sea expert, Dr. Dawn Wright, mentioned when she went to the deepest point in the Mariana Trench, she found a beer bottle down there. And I mean, Mariana Trench is like deeper than Everest is tall. You know, and imagine that even at that point in time, there's still some sort of human litter down there. And megafauna diversity patterns also show increased species richness from the continental shelf down to the slope, and then there's a decrease into the abyssal zone. They also talk about the fact that deep water coral diversity is higher on the continental slope than on the upper continental shelf, and that there are distinct species compositions related to different depth ranges and ecoregions. So I want to speak about the implications for capacity building and capacity development. So I had the honor of being a part of the Crystal Ocean Biosphere Research Accelerator Masterclass on deep sea expedition planning. That's me down to the bottom there. And you can see Michaela. So she was aboard the JC260, and her research assistant that she shouted out in her presentation, Robert Bourne. And I wanted to highlight that too often there is too much parachute science, where we import scientists from all over the world that come in, do some research, they go back to their countries, and that's it for us, right? We have the training here. We have our persons and if we continue to build the capacity, because I know, yesterday when they mentioned about when they brought on all the expensive equipment to try to catch some sharks, and then it was the fisher folk who are used to the terrain that were able to catch it despite having without the expensive equipment. And one of the things that really impressed me on this trip was the fact that Robert, who works very exclusively in Barbados, and he is extremely talented, and you put him on a deep sea research vessel, he usually operates near the coast, and he was a star. Like, everything he is trying to master, like he's going around ensuring that he can master everything. And I remember all the researchers were like, wow, that's so impressive. And once you equip persons with the ability, then you're good to go. So I think that that's one of the things that we have to realize, that we don't need, if we start speaking about the deep sea, we don't necessarily need to bring in researchers from all over the world. We can train our own researchers and our own scientists here in order to do deep sea research. And furthermore, when we talk about implications for fisheries, right? So it was a recent paper on 3D ocean assessments. It revealed that fisheries reaches very deep, and we do fish very deep, but marine protection still remains shallow, and we're focused very much on the continental shelf, and we haven't regulated the type of fishing that happens down at the deep. You know, so I just wanted to touch on that and kind of contextualize it as you hear us move into now our discussions on sinking sargassum in the deep. And yeah, I mean, this was just an image of our natural resources. Wait, Trinidad, and there. Okay, it's here, but it's not here. Okay, no problem. But nevertheless, questions, and yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Are there any questions for Tremaine?
Okay. And don't worry, it's okay if you don't have any questions yet. We're going to have our stakeholder engagement really soon, and we'll be able to, it's going to be very interactive, and you'll be able to discuss, and we'll speak some more. Oh, you have a question?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Absolutely great presentation.
Thank you.
What you said at the end was very important, and I think one of the things that we struggle with is while we have the personnel who are able to get trained, sometimes the capacity and the resources to do these explorations are not readily available. And I'm just curious about how do you see that gap being tackled?
Oh, that's a really brilliant question. The way that I can see that gap being filled, I would say, would be a lot of collaboration. So it's not to say that we don't need the resources, and not to say that we don't absolutely need any scientists from abroad, but what we're saying is that we must be involved as well. You know, that we in the Caribbean, we in the region, people like myself, people like Michaela, people like Ocean, like we need to be involved in any research happening. So even though, yes, we may not have the big research vessel like NOC, you know, if they come, it must never be that when they come here, we're completely excluded from the research taking place. And I think that that's one of the ways that we can begin to fill the gap. I mean, it's a huge gap, and there's a lot that needs to be filled, but I think that that's one of the ways we can begin to fill it. Yeah? All right. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Tremaine. Our next speaker is an online presentation from Pauline Belg.
And I'm going to present you the collection of fresh sargassum at sea and the reimmersion of the coast of Martinique. So the agenda today will be the presentation of the Sargassum program and the environmental monitoring that we are doing at the same time. So the Sargassum program is a national program led by the French government as part of the Plan Sargasse 2. It is an experimental program which will last for 3 years and takes place only in Martinique for now. It started in April 2023 and it will end in April 2026. It is led by the Direction de la Mer de la Martinique, which is a decentralized service of the French ministry responsible for the sea in Martinique. For now, it's a public contract awarded to local companies, Somara, Philodrome, and the fishermen here in Martinique. They are in charge of collecting the sargassum in the freshwater to put them into 2 barges to dry and then dump them off the coast. The nautical resources that we have for this program is 3 collecting boats equipped with collecting systems, 3 transferring boats equipped with cranes, 2 non-motorized dumping barges, tugboats, and then 10 fishermen boats equipped with collecting systems. The results that we have for these 2 years of this program. So the collecting takes place in the Atlantic coast because that's where the most of the sargassum arrives. And the immersion dumping took place in the Atlantic Ocean also, off the coast of the Robert city, approximately 15 miles from the coast and at depth greater than 1,000 meters. In 2023, the volumes collected were around 4,000 cubic meters, 9 dumpings operation, and an amount of money spent of about 680,000 euros. And in 2024, the volumes collected were around 9,000 cubic meters, 11 dumpings operation, and an amount of money spent around 1 million euros. So for now, the environmental monitoring that we are doing at the same time of the program is, so first, the campaign to verify the seabed, fauna and flora of the immersion zone. The specific objectives of this monitoring were to confirm the nature and morphology of the bottoms of the Sargassum immersion zones at approximately 1,000 meters and a wider area, and then to define and observe the benthic and fish species present near the sediment in this area. For that, we used a nacelle capable of carrying 2 high-sensitivity, high-definition cameras, and we filmed the immersion until the bottom of the sea to see if there is some protected fauna and flora there. So here's some pictures of what we found at the bottom. To conclude, we saw a few observations. Compared to previous campaigns with the same techniques, different program, but at shallower depth and in the Caribbean, the biodiversity and abundance were very low. Also note that there is no cartilaginous fish like rays and sharks observed during the campaign. The majority of the organisms encountered were crustaceans like shrimps and small bony fish. So the impact of the Sargassum immersions will be limited on vagal organisms, which will move to avoid them. And the fauna should not be affected because the expected dispersion will not cause significant accumulation of algae on the seabed. The second surface monitoring that, environmental monitoring that we did was surface monitoring of the Sargassum plume in the immersion zone. So for that we used drone videos, fluorescein and surface floats. And the objectives were to follow the immersion zones on the surface in order to note that the Sargassum submerged from the barge is sinking or not, totally or partially. And then to trace, in all cases, the movement of the mass of the surface water at the time of the immersion. So using the fluorescein and the surface floats and the drone. The 4 floats that we had were able to monitor surface currents from approximately 1 hour and 30 minutes over a northern drift of more than 3 kilometers. We also did some core drilling from the Sargassum inside the barge before the dump that helped characterizing the level of petrification of the algae, and the majority appears putrid enough to sink. So the main result of this monitoring is the almost total immersion of the Sargassum. However, after a fairly long time, more than 1 hour and 30 minutes, a few residual rafts of dry Sargassum still floats on the surface. But it is likely that the large part of the algae in compact sheets will end up breaking up and resoaking with water and then sinking, as part that is probably too fresh will possibly remain on the surface, but the majority appears putrid enough to be able to sink. And time monitoring over 1 hour and 30 minutes shows a significant drift of the water table toward the west and the north. So the theoretical zone of the reimmersion at depth is therefore dependent both on shear currents, potentially variable in force and direction several times during the descent of the 1,000 meters in the water column from the point of immersion, but also of the variation of this initial immersion point for the stock of Sargassum, which does not sink immediately. The third environmental monitoring that we did was the monitoring of the Sargassum plume on the water column in the immersion area. So for that we used divers. The immersion protocol was fully monitored by professional divers. The intervention team was made up of 5 people, the skipper of the boat, the sailor, surface supervisors and 2 divers. And the protocol was to position the boat transporting the divers as close as possible to the barge. Deployment of a weighted end with a large surface buoy allowing to be reported on the surface. The divers will be constantly connected to the end using lanyard, and then the immersion of the divers just before opening the barge. The conclusion of this first mission was that when the barge opened, the compressed algae are the first to sink, without mentioning the part of the algae which remains on the surface and drifts for a moment. We observed 2 distinct sections, one at rapid sinking speed and the second at slow sinking speed. So around 20% of the Sargassum was fast casting speed, and 80% of the Sargassum inside the barge was much slower immersion speed. The second mission helped us to precise the calculation of the sedimentation. So we have some result here on the left. And the conclusion was that the second dive confirmed that the smaller pieces sink slowly, very slowly, from the depth of 20 meters. We can assume that the fragments will disperse over an area that is larger, that the sedimentation speed is lower. And the hypothesis put forward during the first dive seems to be confirmed here, namely that the release zone on the surface will therefore not at all correspond to the zone where the Sargassum will touch the bottom. Drift and dispersion suggest a much larger area. And to conclude, the last environmental monitoring that we did was the analysis of water and sediment quality in the mooring areas of the 2 barges. So we had some sediment samplings and some diffusive gradient in thin films samplings too. So for the DGT results, the passive samplers are specific for detecting the concentration of arsenic in 2 forms, AS3 and 5. But there is no threshold values defined by decree for these 2 inorganic forms of arsenic. So we compared the values obtained to a publication where the level represented the level below which a substance is considered to pose no risk to the environment and therefore no harmful effect for the organism present. And so to conclude, both forms of arsenic are present near the barges, but it does not seem likely to cause significant ecotoxicological effects. And for the sediment results, we compared the value to a French decree that we are using when we are analyzing discharge sediments into surface water or marine estuaries. And we saw that no values of mineral pollutant exceeded the first level of this decree, so the sediments weren't polluted. It is nevertheless interesting to note that a difference between the pollutant values for the sediment of the control station of those of the stations of the two corresponding barges. Indeed, for each parameter, the values measured in the sediments at the barges are approximately twice those measures at the control level, so there is therefore possible pollution from the barges without being significant. We also analyzed chlordecone and methylmercury, and we saw that there is no trace of chlordecone and methylmercury detected in the samplings.
Okay, a very abrupt stop. Thanks so much to Pauline. And for the sake of time, we'll move on to the next presentation. And it's the final presentation before we move into our stakeholder engagement. It will be from Francisca Elmer. She will be speaking on sinking sargassum to the deep sea.
So we just heard from Pauline how you could sink sargassum as a way of disposing of it, because a lot of islands don't have enough space to have sargassum landfills. And I will highlight a bit what happens, what we know about sargassum in the deep sea, and also how you could potentially get carbon credits and fund and money for doing this, while also actually doing, making sure that you are measuring a lot of things that are happening down there. And we're just waiting for the presentation to load. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you a bit about carbon credits. Probably all of you have heard about it. You probably all have an opinion for or against them. What is definitely known is that we are in a climate crisis. We have 420 ppm. And we need to also sequester CO2 from the atmosphere, because just reducing our emissions is not enough. Okay, we're not living in a safe space anymore. We need to go back to a safe space. And carbon credits is a way to do this. There's a voluntary market and also a compliance market that pays for carbon sequestration, so the people who do the work can get paid for their efforts. There are quite strict social and ecological safeguards that need to be met. So if you want to be verified with one of the verification agencies, you have to make sure it doesn't do any harm to the local environment and to the local community. And the type of data collection and accounting you need to do to show that actually what you're saying has an impact is actually there is quite robust, and is also a reason why people were questioning carbon credits. So these things become robuster and robuster as we go on. And in one of the trainings I've been in, somebody said, when you're getting a grant and you have to show that your grant is working, you have all these measures that you have to take. Well, for carbon credits, it's stricter than any grant you can get. So it's really the most strict way of actually measuring impact that we have for environmental and conservation efforts. So how does sargassum actually take in carbon or CO2? So it's an algae, it does photosynthesis, so it uses CO2 from the surface ocean or potentially also from the air. And per ton of wet sargassum, it takes up about 183 kilograms of CO2. Nowadays, if the sargassum is not used in products, but it's rotting either on the beach or in a landfill, that carbon that is in the sargassum, some of it will release as methane. Methane is a much more potent climate gas, and as such, actually 500 kilograms of CO2 are released per ton of sargassum, CO2 equivalents, because it's released as methane. And so as sargassum is decomposing, it actually is worse for the climate, even though when it grows, it does as a service. So what can we do? Those useful products you've seen in the previous presentation, as long as you make a useful product, you can get carbon credits from Gold Standard for the methane avoidance. So if you can show that it would have been in the landfill otherwise, and you're making now a product, you can apply for the Gold Standard and sell carbon credits on top of your own product, and make it possible to finance the collection and finance the products you are making. Also, biochar, there's two methodologies from Pure Earth and Verified Carbon Standard, which is from Vera, that you can apply for with sargassum. And when you make biochar from sargassum, the CO2 is actually sequestered for geological timescales. So not only for the 100 years that are very common for carbon sequestration projects. And lastly, if you sink it to the deep sea, the carbon will also be sequestered for a very long time. There are no verified carbon credits you can get for sinking it yet, which makes it really, really interesting because this is in development. They haven't put the rules yet of what needs to be done. And this is a really important time to have your voices on what the rules should be, because very likely people will want to do this in your waters. So this is a really interesting study from Siegel et al., which shows if you release carbon in the depth of different water depths, how long does it take for that carbon to go back to the surface where it can go back into the atmosphere? And this was at the BAT station, which is in Bermuda. And here you can see the different depths. And a lot of times 1,000 meters is seen as like a good depth, but actually a lot of, like already half of it will be released before 100 years. So personally, I would draw the line around 1,800 meters, because you can see that's where the curve really changes from being quite horizontal to going down vertically. So you don't have much change as you increase the depth afterwards. And you can see here, if you want to reach 100 years of sequestration, you only have about 5% of the carbon that will come back up. And that is if the sargassum would actually decompose down there and release its carbon. So, as Tremaine already said, in the Caribbean, we have a lot of deep sea, so you guys should have a say in this. And yes, we already talked about how it's already been happening here too, with the waste disposal. So, and sargassum is sinking naturally. So now I want to tell you a little bit of what we know about the sargassum that naturally ends up in the deep sea. So the further down the sargassum is brought down, the faster those little aerocysts, those little bubbles pop. So if the sargassum is brought down to 100 meters, those bubbles pop in a minute. If you bring it down to 30 meters. If it's less than 17 hours it's down there, the sargassum may resurface again and come back up. So sometimes we have quite high wind speeds during like tropical depressions, and that leads to more downwelling that carries sargassum down to 100 meters. And this is the natural process of how sargassum gets to the deep sea. And you're going to get a sinking speed of about 2.8 to 4 centimeters per second. So it will get to the deep sea in about 40 to 41 hours, likely not having many interactions with animals on the way down, and likely all of it reaching the deep sea. So we know that in the Sargasso Sea, the 10% of the particulate organic matter originates from sargassum, and that the biomass of sargassum in the deep sea is actually 4 times higher than at the surface, which is kind of crazy, because we always think we have a lot of sargassum at the surface. And also in the Gulf of Mexico, it's the most common naturally ocean-produced material found on the seafloor of the deep sea. And observations done per 100 meters of deep sea floor surveys, a lot of them have found sargassum, sometimes up to 11 pieces on a 100-meter transect. And only in Florida and North Carolina did they have transects where they didn't find any sargassum. So on these deep sea surveys, they found that the sargassum was very well preserved. So you could still see the blades and the clumps. And so then they were thinking, if the sargassum is really well preserved, what kind of processes are going on? So either there's steady sedimentation rate, so when sargassum degrades, new sargassum comes down, so you always see well-preserved sargassum, but it's not very old, or it's very slowly degrading. We don't know which one of the two it is. They also have done about 11 studies on what interacts with sargassum in the deep sea, and they found 12 different species. Quite interesting is that one of the studies found that almost none of the sargassum pieces they saw had animals interact with them, only 1.7%. But then another study looking at one of the animals interacting with sargassum, and the Bathyopsaurus nibelini, they found that actually 19 of 32 of them do carry sargassum. So they seem to really like it, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them. And the third study found that actually no direct trophic interaction between the algae and benthic organisms were present. And they think maybe the microbes are the link between sargassum and larger benthic organisms. So definitely we need more studies to know what's actually going on right down there. One of those studies actually looked at a piece of sargassum for 48 hours at a depth of below 5,000 meters. And this is the only study that actually followed sargassum and didn't just do observations right when they just went over sargassum. I found a lot of cool animals, only 2 of them handling sargassum, but some of them on sargassum and some of them around the bait. And then another study found this Bathyopsaurus nibelini that lives at 5,000 to 7,900 meters depth. And it's actually adapted to feed on sargassum, so it has larger paddles, a specific swimming stroke, and mouth parts for tearing. And their gut microbiome can actually degrade macroalgae polysaccharides and fix nitrogen. So we still have a lot of questions left. And if you have any questions about this presentation, you can ask them now. But we also want to hear from you in the stakeholder engagement.
Thank you so much, Fran. Theory has a question.
Wait for the microphone.
I didn't have time to question for French presentation. Was there this sargassum which is returned to the sea, I read that it was returned compressed, but was there any trial with other way, like crushed or pressed or shredded? Only just thrown like that, or was there?
As far as I know, in 2019, in the Dominican Republic, SOS Carbon has used like a vacuum, like with water and sargassum, and just put it deep at like 100, 200 meters, and then from there it just went down. So that's fresh sargassum that was put at depth, so it will sink naturally. But there was no study done on the impact. They just did a test if this is possible. Yeah.
All right, if there are no more questions, we'll close off the formal part, and we're going to head now into our stakeholder engagement. So, yeah, we can sit.
Take your phones out, because we need you now to answer some questions. So you can join our stakeholder engagement via either the link there or the QR code, and start answering this first question. And we will see we should see your answers pop up. We see one person already joined, and after a few questions we have like this to get the idea of the whole room and the opinions of the whole room. We also want to open up the mic for a few engagements. Hopefully we have time for it, to talk about it and have yeah. So we see some people are quite impacted. We don't have anybody yet who's not impacted. Quite interesting. I do like the reactions. If it's ticking, yeah. It is taking yeah. Yeah, we'll give everybody a bit of time to join, especially for the first question. See if new people joining. Is there anybody who needs more time to join? Put your hand up. Yeah, one person, two people. Give you some more time. Somebody really likes the emojis, I see. All right, are we ready to go to the next questions? Okay. Thank you, Fadila. So now we would like your opinion. How do you feel about sinking sargassum to the deep sea after what you heard today?
We knew this would be a controversial question. Anyone needs a little more time? Show me. No? All right. Good to go. Ooh, someone likes the hearts for this one. All right, next question, please. So we would like to know, has your opinion changed based on today's presentation? Either you're yes, more in favor, no, you haven't changed your opinion, or yes, less in favor. Your opinion on sinking Sargassum to the deep sea. Sorry, we weren't very clear. Yes, has your opinion on sinking Sargassum to the deep sea changed based on today's presentation? Right, and don't be influenced by who's saying what. You have your own opinion.
All right, it seems like some people have gained some more trust in this, and some people already have made their opinion up before. Next question, please. So, would you or your community support any of the ways to, would you support sinking sargassum in your waters? It says only to reduce sargassum in landfill, because if you sink it for carbon credits, you naturally will also reduce sargassum in landfill, because you cannot sink it without it, then it will not go to landfill. So that's why there's the only and the also.
No, can we go back? I just want to see the answers. Could you see the answers, the number to the top, Fadila? How much is it? Yeah. But it seems, yeah, but it's a majority of persons thinking that they can also generate revenue via carbon credits. And some people say, okay, only reduce the amount of sargassum in the landfill, and about 4% say neither would they support the sinking of sargassum. Next. All right. So our question now is, which types of sargassum carbon credits would be useful for your community? Would sinking sargassum to the deep sea be useful? Or would biochar addition into construction materials or biochar addition to agricultural soil or avoidance of methane emissions at landfills by producing sargassum products?
And I'm pretty sure there's multiple answers possible, so you can select multiple. No? No. Only one. So you have to choose your favorite. So it seems we have a quite even result between making any type of products and using biochar in different ways. And some people also see a way of sinking sargassum to the deep sea. Next. So now you can put words in. So we're making a word cloud. What needs to be studied more in order to form an informed decision on sargassum sinking? So imagine you are a permitting agency and you are being asked to say yes to sinking sargassum. What would you tell them they would have to study still before you could say yes or no? So rate of decomposition, I see, impact, long-term effects, downcurrent impacts, habitat stability, ecosystem, species, methodologies to be used, carbon storage, costs, historical data, inorganic carbon, deep water surveys, fauna, benthic ecosystem, ecosystem of the deep, long-term migration, costs, we have cost twice, mineralization of organic matter, types of deep sea habitats, chemical reactions. Anyone?
I think you mentioned deep water surveys, inorganic carbon, sargassum ecology, definitely. Sargassum preservation in the deep, I'm assuming. And yeah, organic impact, waste of a resource. That one is really interesting. As we saw on the last slide, we see that sargassum is very useful. Yeah. I think we're okay. All right, the next one.
I like that impact is in the
and I like the impact and costs highlighted. Next slide.
Sorry,
This is the last one. And now we want to know, how long do you think a study on sinking sargassum to the deep sea, how long does it need to run? because we didn't want to give you just some options and you just choose a little default option. I want you to really think and decide how long do you think a study such as this should run.
Years is very popular. So we see a lot of 5 years. Some people say 1 year. Some people say 5 to 10, 2 years, ongoing, 3 years. Minimum of 10 years. 2 minutes. Wow. That study already exists.
I see here someone says decomposition rate, so I'm assuming it's as long as we're able to determine the extent of the decomposition rate. 2 years. So I'm scared to say I haven't seen anyone go over 10, and then as soon as I say this, you're going to see somebody say 25. At least 2 years. Okay. So it seems to be a consensus, either 1 year or ongoing or under 10 years. So.
Yeah, and the next 2 questions are just quick questions on where you're from and what do you work to, so that when we have these results and we will look at these results, we can put them in the proceedings and really say who was part of the study. Ah, we got people's names too. We got the Bahamas, Antigua Barbuda, Guadeloupe, Martinique, St. Lucia, Trinidad Tobago, Martinique, St. Kitts, Mexico, South Florida, very cool, Puerto Rico, Guadeloupe, St. Lucia. Oh, Guadeloupe with a picture. I like that. The person lives on a sailboat, looks like. Still some people typing.
I think we have our quota. We'll see how many more. Go back. And we can move on to the last question now, I believe. And we're going to choose which job category best describes you. Are you a government official, an educator, a conservationist, a fisher? Are you academic? Are you a student? So we see a lot of you all consider yourself conservationists. Awesome. You're academics, educator, fisher. Awesome.
Okay, so that's the end of our survey. We also know that we're just at time and we need to make space for the next session. but maybe 1 or 2 opinions on sinking sargassum. If anybody has an opinion they want to share with the room or question, we can take. But we don't want to make the next session too late. But if you have opinions and you cannot voice them now, come to us. We will definitely integrate it and we will take it to heart as well.
All right. Thank you for engaging with us. It seems no one has a question, but we really enjoyed this session. Thank you. Next time, when we're going to ask where you're from, we'll bring flags so y'all can wave.
Thank you, everyone. Next up, we're going to transition to our aquaculture session. We only have 2 presentations.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to transition from sargassum into aquaculture. So the first presentation we have today is from Franziska, who just got up. Now she needs to come to the other side. Who'll be talking about catch and grow, how sargassum aquafarms can flatten the feedstock fluctuation. So please, let's take a moment, take a seat. And where is Franziska? Oh, there she is. Hi.
So this was our good cube to make the sargassum session even longer, to put it also into the aquaculture session. No, it was actually GCFI who asked us to do so. So at Seafields, we have developed the sargassum aqua farm, and you may think, why the hell would you want to grow sargassum? We got way too much of it. Well, the people who want to make products, as seen in the presentation before, they're really struggling with the large fluctuation of sargassum coming in. That you don't know how much you're going to get this year, how much you're going to get the next week, and how much you get on a day. And some days it's a lot, some days very little. So it's very hard to plan a machine park, a team of workers around it. So the sargassum aquaculture can help with this. First of all, you can grow sargassum in the few months where you're not getting any, and that way you can give people year-round employment. You can also, on a day when so much sargassum arrives that you cannot process it all, and some of it would have to go to landfill, you can store it in the aqua farm like a fridge, and it's stored fresh and alive in the water. And then on a day when you don't have much sargassum and you would have to tell people to go home because you don't have a job for them and your machines would just stand around, you can take that sargassum and use it so that up and down that we have in nature, we can flatten that just by using an aqua farm. The challenge is when you want to aqua farm sargassum, sargassum needs to move. This is what the scientists at UNAM and at CERMES found out when they did in-water studies, and they came up with these contraptions to put the sargassum in, so the sargassum and the things that hold it moves around on tethers. So how to put that in practice for a big farm? And this is the sargassum farm we made. It's our prototype that was 150 square meters of sargassum space inside. And it's actually moving left to right with a tether as well. And on the picture there you can see the 48-hour movement. So each point is where the farm was at each hour of the day, around 2 days. So you can see it really moved around quite a bit in the bay in St. Vincent that we did the study in. So next is, we looked at the first thing we wanted to see, is the sargassum staying healthy and is it growing? So we took Sargassum natans 8, which is the most robust of the sargassums species that we have, and we measured the length, and then we put a little tag on it, and we put it in the farm, and then 10 days later we swam through the farm looking for all those tags and re-measured. We also used PVC and flotation on the PVC with a mesh net, which you can see in the middle, like a mesh bag and a little bottle down here. And we swam under the mat, released it so it would go up, and we swim out again without disturbing the mat to get the measurement of density. And at the same time, we would take a drone shot, which you can see here, to measure the surface area. And here you can see the 5 squares we put in. So this would give us an estimate of how much biomass is in the entire farm. And then in the end, we also had these cubes on the side, 2 of them, one submerged and one not submerged. There were 2 by 2.5 by 2.5 by 2.5 meters with net all around. And we put 10 kilograms of sargassum in each, measured it before and 10 days later to see how the biomass changed. So the sargassum survived for 6 weeks. It was definitely healthy. Growth was also happening, but it's kind of difficult to tell you how much. The Sargassum natans 8 grew quite slowly, about 0.8 millimeters a day. But the doubling rates we found with the second method was about doubling in 10.6 days, which was quite on the fast side of sargassum growth. And we also use cameras to see if sargassum is lost, like by sinking naturally. And only about 0.8 to 6.4% of all the sargassum was sinking down. So there was very little that would sink down. In the squares themselves, the doubling rate was 37 days, which is a bit long for coastal areas, but it probably is the most exact measurement we took because you measured the entire biomass before and after. However, it was the only measurement we didn't take in the aqua farm itself, but in something that was attached to it. So we also looked at how much photosynthesis is happening. First of all, we use presents, which are these really cool dots you can put on bottles. And then with fiberglass fibers, you can measure the dissolved oxygen inside the bottle. So we could put sargassum in a bottle. We had 2 different ones, one from the aqua farm, one from the wild. And we would measure how much dissolved oxygen it was producing. And we put 13C in bottles with sargassum, and after 24 hours took the sargassum out, went to the lab in Germany, measured how much 13C was incorporated in the sargassum to measure how much carbon it was taking up in those 24 hours. And what we can see here is the brown, these 2 brown ones are the sargassum from the aqua farm. So when the aqua farm was full, and when it was half full, the 2 lines overlap, so we think it kind of has the same amount of oxygen production. The only difference was that it was sunnier when the aqua farm was full, and we used regular sunlight. But the wild sargassum, actually, those 2 don't overlap, so there is definitely a bigger variation between mats that naturally come to shore. And interestingly, the cage we used, at the end we did a study with it too, and it was almost one of the highest ones, which shows that potentially those growth studies done by UNAM and Surmise, which have smaller sizes, may be overestimating a bit the growth that is happening in nature. Also for the carbon fixation rate, it was the same as here. It was done when the the paddock was half full and the wild sargassum was lower than in the paddock. If we also did it when it was full, it would have switched like it did here, but we don't know. Then last year, between September and December, we had our sargassum paddock for 3 months in Mount Wynn Bay with a little bit of sargassum, sometimes 20 to 30%, and sometimes no sargassum in it. And what you could see is that when we had 20 to 33%, these up and downs that you get every day for temperature, pH, and dissolved oxygen were much higher peaks than on days when you didn't have sargassum. Here you'd see a big jump. That's because we recalibrated the pH meter. We recalibrated all of them, but somehow there was a huge change in the values after. And you also here you can see them becoming a bit bigger, which has to do with the biofouling that is happening on the paddock itself. So you can see here in black the inside of the paddock in the first month when it was still very clean, and it is the same as outside of the paddock, so the dissolved oxygen doesn't change if there's no sargassum in it. But then when you have sargassum in it, you have that orange big peak. However, once the paddock has a lot of algae growing on it and more animals around it, you really have also a peak inside the paddock that is different from outside, which is the green line, which was quite interesting to see. And finally, we saw a lot of cool fish around our paddock. So this was definitely our favorite part of the study. So 15 juvenile species, 10 adult species, a lot of jacks, a lot of damselfish, and some other fish as well. We did this both with in-water surveys around the paddock and underwater cameras inside. And after about 2 weeks, we had spear fishermen come in the morning to spearfish the bigger fish we had there. And it really shows that this could be a new fishing spot or a new snorkel site. And yes, you can store sargassum fresh if you want to. And if you want to, you can even grow it in the off-season. And I want to thank everybody who helped with the fieldwork. Not on the picture are Tremaine and Joshua Gooding, who also helped for the September fieldwork.
Okay, so we do have time for questions. Does anyone have any questions for Fran? Okay, while we wait, I do have a question.
Yes.
Was the paddock impacting the water quality of the surrounding environment in the bay?
Not that we saw. So the water was very clear, and it was above seagrass as well. And we didn't do a study on the seagrass, but we swam around it every day, and I didn't see any visual changes in either water quality or the seagrass quality down there. It was very clean. Yeah.
Good to know. Yes. Hold on, we have to get your mic.
And I just wanted to add that I feel like from our time at the paddock, we could also see if it was negatively impacting the seagrass, because we didn't see many blades like dying or popping up or floating to the surface, like very, very minimal, like 2 or 3 like every day or so. So it wasn't really negatively affecting. And in the seagrass bed, they had considerable fishes swimming around, and that was part of our entertainment while working on the paddock. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we still have time for one more question. Going once, going twice. Well, thanks a lot, Fran. You're free to go. Up next, Fadila, is it up next? Eric Sayed. Erica is talking about a selective breeding program to improve aquaculture performance of the eastern oyster, Crassatrea virginica, in different salinity environments. Please, let's have the air for Eric.
Bonjour, merci de participer à cette petite session d'aquaculture. J'espère que c'est une session qui va grossir un petit peu dans les années à venir. And I think I'm going to continue in English so that more people maybe can understand. I'm going to talk about a breeding program that we've started developing in the Gulf of Mexico in 2019. And it's a consortium project that involves several institutions in the different states that border the Gulf of Mexico. So bivalve mollusks are definitely on the forefront of the development of aquaculture, marine aquaculture. Probably an example on how aquaculture is going to become more and more important in seafood production. It's American oyster, eastern oyster, Crassostea aboriginae is found along the east coast of the United States, all the way from Canada to the southern Gulf of Mexico. And it's a very ecologically important species, and it's, of course, a major seafood production in the US. More than half of that production is actually in the Gulf of Mexico. As in other oyster species around the world, there's been a major decline. First major decline were along the east coast of the US, but I think also in the Gulf, maybe not as major decline initially, but in recent years and past couple of decades, declines of population in the Gulf, and that impacts the harvest. There's multiple factors involved in species like oysters that unfortunately we know not understand always fully what is the cause. It's a combination of factors. But it goes from overexploitation, of course, disease, water quality, temperature, warm temperature in the Gulf of Mexico is definitely a factor. In response to that decline of population, there's several restoration projects, some that employ aquaculture to restore reefs, and also aquaculture to directly produce eastern oyster to supply the market when the wild harvests are declining. So when we started this project, there was no aquaculture usually is accompanied by breeding programs that kind of help address some of the cause of the decline because oysters are usually grown out in the natural environment, and so aquaculturists also have to deal with whatever is causing the reefs to decline. So this consortium was formed in 2019. And its objectives were to work with the industry to find out what are the traits that are important for production that we would work on with selective breeding, and then to develop program to produce oysters that had improved genetic values for those traits and would help the industry be successful. And also a couple of other objectives was to develop genetic resource repositories so that the program can be disseminated easily, and also for redundancy of security, and also to test our improved oysters for triploid production, which is another genetic technique that can help aquaculture production. So on the right side, you have the research team, which involves our university, Auburn University, LSU, University of Florida, Texas A&M University, that runs the Texas part of the program. And then we also have a business advisory council that meets with us regularly and defines the objectives with us and also gets updated on progress of the project. So initially, we did a survey with the industry in the Gulf to find out what traits they thought were their feedback on what traits they thought were important for selective breeding. What came out was a strong emphasis on grow-out traits. When the oysters they are produced in hatcheries, in control system, and they are deployed in cages in the natural environment. And this is where the industry felt we had to put most of our efforts. So we are focused on grow-out traits so far in the project. And there are other characters like disease resistance, some traits in the hatcheries that we are monitoring, and we actually start working on some of those right now also, but they were a lower priority. In this program, we employ an approach to selective breeding that's a bit different from what other programs have done. Most of the existing projects involve generating a lot of crosses, hundreds of families, typically 200 in a program, and then testing them, measuring the characters, and then selecting the best families for the next generation. And usually this is done by having all the family, hundreds of families replicated in different cages and bags. So in the farm, it is very heavy workload, and it's difficult to have multiple sites if we do that. So in this project, what we did is we still generate 200 crosses, but we mix them all in the hatchery at fertilization. And at the end of the experiment, whenever we harvest and we measure characters on the oysters, we take a piece of sample, a tissue sample, and we use genetic markers to find out their pedigrees and actually even collect more genomic information on these oysters. And we use that data to estimate breeding values. So that makes it much more practical. We have been able to test our pools of families on 6 or 7 sites every generation, and it was much lighter on the aquaculture end. So this is just a quick summary on the crossing design, like 200 families that involve 100 males and 100 females that are crossed. And the line was formed by breeding oyster from all around the Gulf. We wanted to capture the environmental variability of the habitat, so we had genotypes that potentially had good breeding values for the characters and high and low salinity that we wanted to work on. So you can see like in blue all the testing site. I'm sorry the color didn't come out on the slide, I don't know why, but in blue is where we sampled the oyster initially to start the program, and in red are the sites where we tested the oyster for performance. So the sites include, we did a survey on environmental condition and salinity in particular in different coastal waters where oysters are cultured in the Gulf, to find out what are the conditions that we want to work on. And there is, from the industrial emphasis on low salinity, like in the north central Gulf of Mexico, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, where we get very low salinity events. And higher salinity is more like in Texas or in Florida. So we developed the program for these two types of conditions. And by using several testing sites, we have the opportunity to, at the end of the grow-out period, make sure that the sites that we are going to use for evaluation actually corresponded to high or low salinity. If it was a bad year in one site, it was lower salinity, then we can toss it and we just focus on the one that are responding to our need. So these are a few details. I don't think I need to detail too much, but we kept some sample. Some of the oysters are kept alive and tagged, and they are used for broodstock. And then the other oysters, the other oysters are simply harvested and measured for characters. And we use low density genotyping for now, but we are switching to high density genotyping to recover the pedigree of oysters. So this is what we observed in the first generation. So this is simply the distribution of the dam and sire families. That means the female brooder's contribution and the male brooder contribution, and in the different on the different testing sites. So we looked really at one high salinity site here in blue, and the other 3 blue are the low salinity. So you can see that if we look at the contribution of the 100 mothers or the 100 fathers, we have a very clear, distinct pattern where the high salinity had different family distribution. Some families survived better in a high salinity environment, and vice versa. Some survive better in the low salinity environment. And this was true for both the female and male side, and also if we look at individual crosses. So that shows, that confirms what have been reported on the East Coast, is that there's definitely different factors impacting survival in high and low salinity environments. Then we used a model to maximum likelihood model to estimate breeding values for growth traits, which was a second character that we actually based the selective breeding on. and found that heritability was relatively high, so there was good prospect to improve growth for in the two type of environments. And interestingly, for growth, there was a high genetic correlation between high and low salinity sites, and which means that when we breed even for one salinity, we have also good response in growth for the other one, in principle. So we have data already on a second generation that I'm going to summarize quickly here. So on this graph, you see the response to selection in low salinity environments. So these are families that we bred based on the breeding values for low salinity performance. And as you can see, for the shell height, which is a growth trait or shell length, you have the little so selected on two sides. There are one side in blue and one side in black. We have every time the selected has a higher in dotted growth, higher shell height than the control, and that's true for the second side. So a positive response to selection for growth, and for mortality. You have the interval mortality. We didn't have much mortality at the beginning, but then when we had mortality, it is higher in the control than in the selected. So positive response in the low salinity environment. And for those that were bred for high salinity performance, same thing. We have in the first site, the selected had a faster growth. You can see there on top, clearly on top. And then the mortality on this first high salinity site was very low, so we didn't see much. But on the second high salinity site that we used, there is also higher mortality in controls than in selected. So also positive response, correlated response in survival. The feedback we get from these first two generations is that we are definitely dealing with a variable environment. So I think it was encouraging to see that we got some positive response to selection, even though the high salinity and the low salinity were a little bit different between the two generations. But I think we started thinking that it also would be helpful to monitor specific traits, maybe with control challenges approaches, so that we get something a little more that we get more consistently improve every generation and hopefully get a more consistent progress over time. So we started working on that with high tolerance to high temperature, and we are also in the process of working on disease resistance and low salinity tolerance. And in the Texas program that didn't detail too much is also in progress. They work also on high salinity tolerance. So we have the initial results show that there is positive prospect to improve tolerance to high temperature by selection. To conclude, I think we are also going to switch in the next generation to a high density genotyping and a genomic selection approach. I'm happy to answer questions on that, but this should also lead to faster genetic progress over time. And incorporation of triploid breeding. So with that, I think I'm probably at my time. I want to acknowledge our funding from NOAA and Gulf State Marine Fisheries Commission, and thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Eric. You have time for one quick question. Okay. Do we have any questions for Eric? Yes, in the back to Nancy.
Hey, Eric, that was great to hear what you guys are doing. I must have missed it. What do you consider high salinity and what do you consider low salinity?
We did an initial survey of historical data in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and even some sites in Florida. And what happens relatively consistency in those sites is that in spring there's a low swing and that in between, around 10 or less, and it tends to rise some in the late summer. And the size that we use for high salinity is like 25 or 30 parts or more. Even Alligator Harbor has 30 plus. And again, I think these are all sites in a natural environment, so it's not a constant level, and some variation from year to year, but that kind of gives you an idea of what the range we have, like definitely like 15-part difference on average, I would say, something like that.
Thank you very much. Before we go to lunch, the student award auction is now closed. Please come to the back, check, make sure if you've won, pay your money. If you've not won, hopefully the person that outbid you didn't come, and then you could buy it off them. Collect your prizes today and tomorrow. Otherwise, we'll see you back at 2 p.m. for MPA or Habitats and Ecosystems? And Ecosystems. Enjoy lunch, everyone.